Presidential candidates look for support among black voters as Madison Square Garden gets ready for the next main attraction, the Democrats.
This is NBC Nightly News, reported by Garrett Utley.
Good evening. This is indeed Bill Clinton's big moment. He has his running mate. He will soon have his party's nomination. And today he got some more good news. Two polls released this day show Clinton virtually tied with President Bush and slightly ahead of Ross Perot, a strong showing for Clinton. So if timing is everything in politics, and it probably is, the timing couldn't be better for Clinton with the Democratic Convention opening Monday. Andrea Mitchell is at Madison Square Garden. Good evening, Andrea.
Good evening, Garrick. Well, Bill Clinton is spending the night in New York preparing for the biggest speech of his life. But on the way, he tried out the tickets appeal on the road.
Here we go.
The Clinton and Gore family started the day in the rural South, Al Gore's hometown of Carthage, Tennessee. In a year when both parties are talking about family values, Al Gore opened the campaign with a prayer.
But those of us who are believers would like to ask your blessings on this campaign and on the campaign of our opponents, that the outcome would be in thy service.
It won't remain prayerful for very long.
Our opponents are skilled in the politics of negative campaigning. They'll tell you how liberal Al is and how poor Arkansas is. All I've got to say is if he'd been running this government for the last 4 years, we'd be in better shape.
Clinton and Gore are both sons of the New South with strong civil rights records. At the NAACP convention today in Nashville, they tested their appeal before black voters. In a three-way race, black support is even more important than usual to Democratic chances.
I want us to be singing together in the White House in a year or so. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Let's make America sing again.
We have to move beyond us and them, you and me, and reach out for we the people. It's all of us together.
Clinton and Gore are comfortable with black audiences, have worked and campaigned with blacks for years. Not so Ross Perot. Earlier, before the same audience, he managed to offend many people by talking about how well his family had treated poor blacks in their hometown, and by referring to blacks as you people.
Financially, at least, it's going to be a long, hot summer, right? Now, I don't have to tell you who gets hurt first when this sort of thing happens, do I? Your people do. Your people do.
Perot has been showing some strength among blacks in recent polls, but today's choice of language hurt him.
It's sort of a word that sort of Southern type, segregationist type word that says to us that, you know, you are separated from us.
General reaction to Mr. Perot's speech, from your perspective?
He meant well.
When you said you people, you and your people, instead of saying our people.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Clinton must still resolve his uneasy relationship with Jesse Jackson, who has still not endorsed the ticket. Jackson is scheduled to speak before the convention Tuesday night. Clinton aides said that it is traditional for people who address the convention to endorse the candidates, and they still expect Jackson to do so. Garrick.
Thank you, Andrea Mitchell. Well, it has been noted and said that choosing a vice presidential running mate is a candidate's first presidential decision. So it was with Bill Clinton choosing Al Gore, and so it was 4 years ago when George Bush picked Dan Quayle. What does that decision mean for the president in this campaign? Here's Tom Pettit.
Is Dan Quayle an asset or a liability in the 1992 campaign? He has learned a lot since that day in New Orleans 4 years ago. But inadvertently, he still does some funny things.
Well, I know he's not an idiot, but I think he needs to study more.
In fact, Quayle is the point man in the Bush-Quayle re-election campaign. Quayle has been out front on many of the administration's issues. It was Dan Quayle who first enunciated the so-called family values issue.
Today I will be emphasizing the importance of family values. I want to set the record straight. I want to be very clear. I like Tammy Wynette.
It doesn't help matters when primetime TV has Murphy Brown, a character who supposedly epitomizes today's intelligent, highly paid professional woman, mocking the importance of fathers by bearing a child alone and calling it just another lifestyle choice.
Quayle speaks passionately against rock music that advocates killing cops.
What legitimate role does this have in society? And I'm not talking about a law, I'm talking about good judgment, common sense, and decency.
Dan Quayle has become the darling of the Republican right wing, but in doing so has ignited a minor dump Quayle boomlet.
And I believe that he needs to have a new running mate in order to, I think, strengthen the ticket.
Would Bush consider dumping Quayle? Veteran Republican operative Vic Gold.
I would bet this home, but and anything else, that is not going to happen.
Writer Jules Witcover, a noted Quayle basher.
The damage control in a situation like that may be more severe than it's worth taking the risk of replacing him in the first place.
For the Bush campaign, it is not a question of dumping Quayle. It is a question of whether Secretary of State Baker can be persuaded to straighten out the entire campaign. Tom Pettit, NBC News, Washington.
Tom Pettit makes an interesting point there. Secretary of State Baker is President Bush's closest political advisor and past campaign manager. If he gets involved in this campaign, it'll be an open acknowledgement that Bush is in serious trouble. However, if he does not get involved, the campaign could get into deeper trouble. So either way, James Baker is someone to keep a political eye on. Let's turn now to Ross Perot, and Lisa Myers, who's covering the campaign, was with us. Ross Perot needs a running mate. What do we know about whom he's looking at and when he'll announce one?
Well, without question, Garrick, selecting a running mate is the most important and the most difficult choice that Ross Perot faces between now and September. What he needs is someone who is credible, who will be instantly perceived as being qualified to be president. Now, politically, they'd like to have someone who would help them in the Northeast. They're looking at blacks, they're looking at women. But the most important thing is that this person be credible.
Okay, if they're looking at blacks or women, particularly blacks, a minority candidate, that would get a lot of attention, maybe get him votes. But today he didn't make many friends at the NAACP. What does that mean?
Well, I think Ross Perot's experience is showing that happened for two reasons. First of all, Ross Perot, unlike most politicians, has not been sensitized to a lot of the concerns of many groups of American voters. But secondly, he serves as his own speechwriter. So most candidates would have been saved from that mistake because someone would have caught it. And while writing your own speeches may be laudable, it's also fraught with
and this
peril.
Is what he said, what we heard today. Now, we're talking about Ross Perot picking a running mate. He hasn't even announced. When, finally, do we get that announcement?
Well, probably late August. That's the date they're now talking about.
After the Republican convention, before the big campaign on Labor Day.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lisa Myers, for being with us. Well, also on the convention, this footnote. New York City, of course, is expensive, and so the city is trying to make the Democratic convention delegates feel welcome. About 100 restaurants in the city are now offering lunch at $19.92 a person. One of the more expensive restaurants, where lunch usually costs $45 each, is being flooded with phone calls from those having nothing at all to do with the convention. They just are looking for a good bargain, including people like actors Robert De Niro and Sylvester Stallone. So what does this all mean? In New York, there is no free lunch, but $19.92 is just about as close as you can get to one. As we cover our world this Saturday, we'll go next overseas to Sarajevo, where the fighting there continues. Back in this country, we'll go to Florida, where bungee jumping has been banned. And on Focus this evening, we'll see why many families with handicapped children who are entitled to government help aren't getting it.
Red Devil enamel. You can always count on its durable finish. Harder than ordinary paints, its beauty lasts and lasts. Red Devil enamel for the finish of a lifetime.
Dear Thompsons, when the
Bill Clinton and Al Gore. What do we see in this picture? Well, we see two white males from the same region with the same religion, similar political views, almost the same age. Siblings, you might think, separated at birth and now reunited just in time for next week's convention. Why? Well, today we saw Clinton, Gore, and Ross Perot looking for support of black Americans before the NAACP. But the candidates know something else. This November, for the first time, the majority of voters who vote will likely be living in the suburbs, which are mostly white, mostly politically moderate, and a home to baby boomers and their families. So, here are Clinton and Gore, two white, politically moderate, leading-edge members of the baby boom generation. Talk about trying to fit a job profile. Is this politically correct? Not in reflecting the changing complexion of American life, but it may well be politically correct in getting elected. It's often said of the changes in this nation that there is, quote, strength in diversity. Is that a fact or just a hope? Ross Perot still has to pick his running mate, but so far Bush, Quayle, Clinton, and Gore, like candidates before them, are saying that diversity on the ticket is not the way to the White House, at least not yet. And we'll have more coverage of the Democratic Convention and the campaign tomorrow morning on Sunday Today, followed by a one-hour edition of Meet the Press with guests Mariel Cuomo and Jesse Jackson. I'm Garrett Utley. Good night for NBC News.
In seconds, you get a protective finish and a showroom feel that's so real you can smell it. Just like a brand new car. But all that was easy. Watch new vinyl make the seat of this junkyard car look like new. Now it's softer, more supple. Even gives these tires a showroom shine. So whether your car's really old or just feeling old, new vinyl will bring it back, fast. There's only one new vinyl. It's guaranteed. Want it back? That new car feeling? It's yours with new vinyl.
There's only one new vinyl available at Hilo Auto Supply, Auto Express, Chief Auto, Walgreens, Randall's, Pettigrew Smith, Eckerd, and Kmart. Channel 2, KPRC-TV, Houston.
Good morning.
New York!
It's convention time. Will these two Democrats change the party's image and end its presidential losing streak? Women in politics. They may not be on the presidential ticket, but in the year of the outsider, their time has come. And Gary Hart, from campaign manager to presidential candidate, he talks about the lessons of politics and his party.
From NBC News, this is Sunday Today with Garrett Utley, Mary Alice Williams, and Al Roker.
And a good Sunday morning to one and all. Glad you're with us for the next 90 minutes. And we have a particular focus on this Sunday Today because, of course, ready or not, here it comes. Convention season. Democratic delegates have flooded into New York City. It's part political process, part street theater. We'll be devoting most of our program this morning to something called the conventions, the political process here in the United States.
That's right. We'll also be looking at the bad rap the Democratic Party's gotten over the years, that they're the party that can't win. And we'll try to inject a little humor into this political process.
That's right. Some political punsters will be joining us a little bit later. But around much of the country today, we've got thunderstorms from Colorado all the way into Pennsylvania and New York State, causing problems.
That's no laughing matter.
No.
Let's get to the news first. Mary Alice, how's that?
And we begin this morning with the countdown to the Democratic Convention. As the delegates descend upon New York, the last major step has been taken toward a united and harmonious convention. Jesse Jackson has finally endorsed Bill Clinton and Al Gore for the Democratic ticket. Jackson ended weeks of speculation by making his last-minute official endorsement on his own talk show, Both Sides with Jesse Jackson.
All of us. Bill Clinton and Al Gore have the opportunity. They will accept the burden of putting forth a plan of healing, rebuilding, and reconciliation to make America better.
With the party solidly behind the Clinton-Gore ticket, Democratic leaders say they have a great chance to get the early momentum in the race for the White House. There was evidence of that yesterday at the NAACP convention in Nashville. Then Clinton headed to New York to collect his party's nomination. Meanwhile, the Big Apple is bustling to welcome the Democrats. We have two reports from Bob Kerr and Andrea Mitchell.
Bill Clinton arrived in New York to work on the most important speech of his life.
Coming out of this convention, the American people are going to know there is a team, there is a party, there is an approach that will bring this country back.
On the way, Clinton and his running mate Al Gore, both sons of the New South with strong civil rights records, went to the NAACP convention in Nashville. In a three-way race, black support is even more important than usual to Democratic chances.
We, the people of the United States, we're all in this boat together. We're going up or down together. And if I have one message, it is that we don't have a person to waste or a moment to lose.
We want you to be a part of the winning team. In order for us to win, it must be a victory for us.
Clinton and Gore both have good track records with black audiences, have worked and campaigned with Afro-Americans for years. Ross Perot has not. Earlier in the day, before the same audience, he managed to offend many people by talking about how well his family had treated poor blacks in their hometown, and by referring to blacks as you people.
Financially, at least, it's going to be a long, hot summer, right? Now, I don't have to tell you who gets hurt first when this sort of thing happens, do I? Your people do. Your people do.
Recent polls show that the race is a dead heat among the three candidates. If Clinton is going to pull ahead, a successful convention in New York is crucial. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News at Madison Square Garden in New York.
Other convention delegates won't be welcomed with such fanfare, but this celebration greeted those from Arkansas, Bill Clinton's home state. When the Democrats were told it had cost as much as 50 cents to blow up each of the thousands of balloons they wanted, they recruited volunteers instead. All is almost ready in Madison Square Garden now as reporters and technicians get used to the place. And though 5,000 delegates and 15,000 members of the media are about to converge here, Therese Hartnett, who gives horse and buggy rides, says they won't make a dent.
It takes a lot of people to make a difference in a city of 9 million, you know?
As parks and streets are cleaned, all the homeless are being rounded up and brought to recreation centers at night. And police are everywhere.
I think it's too bad that they're taking the homeless and taking them off the street and pretending they don't exist.
This is a good weekend to be here because the city's cleaner, you have more security, and so this is kind of like a bonus.
At least 14 groups plan to demonstrate as close to the convention as they can get, and they've already started. Topless bars near the convention have hired extra dancers, hoping to bring in delegates.
Hopefully this year will attract them.
Parties are being set up everywhere, even a big one for the media.
Campaign and the election will come and go, but the media will be around for a long, long time. They'll be writing many stories about New York in years to come.
Precisely, sir. Good party. Bob Kerr, NBC News, New York.
And as Democrats prepare to unite against President Bush and the Republicans inside Madison Square Garden, there were already some sharp disagreements outside. Several hundred abortion rights activists went to a clinic to prevent anti-abortion demonstrators from blocking the doors. It was peaceful, but later 2 anti-abortion demonstrations resulted in 6 arrests. Meanwhile, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, anti-abortion demonstrators tried to storm a clinic. Police at a new chain-link fence stopped them. There were no arrests there. Overseas, reports from the besieged city of Sarajevo say it was the quietest night there in some time, with only isolated gunfire. Meantime, United Nations troops cleared the way for a convoy of trucks carrying emergency supplies to one of the city's most devastated areas. The latest from NBC's Tom Aspel.
Croatian tanks firing against Serbian positions near Dubrovnik on the Adriatic coast. Despite pressure from the international community, the ethnic war in the former republics of Yugoslavia is continuing. In Bosnia, Sarajevo has been under siege for 3 months now. President Alija Izetbegovic keeps asking the West to intervene militarily and push back the Serbian forces surrounding his capital. But the United States and Europe are reluctant to get involved. The West has made moves to tighten economic sanctions against Serbia. The NATO alliance has assembled a small force of American and European ships to enforce a ban on trade with what's left of Yugoslavia. They'll take up station in the Adriatic Sea. But hardline Serbian leader Slobodan Milosevic hasn't yet made any moves to stop the fighting, and he's resisted calls from opposition groups to resign. Yugoslavia's designated Prime Minister, Milan Panic, says he has a plan to stop the war and get the UN sanctions lifted, but he hasn't revealed any details. Tom Aspel, NBC News, Belgrade.
Pope John Paul II will enter a hospital in Rome later today for a series of tests. He made the announcement himself during the weekly noon prayer in St. Peter's Square, and he asked people in the crowd for their prayers. The Vatican later said the tests were for an intestinal dysfunction, and he may face surgery. That's the news.
And we hope if he does that everything goes well. It's not too serious. You have good news for us for some parts?
Well, for some parts, unfortunately, other parts, no, Gary. Good morning, everybody. Let's check it out. First of all, our radar scan from the last 6 hours, and you will see heavy thunderstorms moving through the midsection of the country. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 2 hours. In 2 hours, they got about 2 inches of rain earlier this morning. Heavy stuff moving through the midsection of the country as well. Take a look. Here's what it looks like on the ground. A slight risk of severe thunderstorms from Colorado all the way into western New York State and western Pennsylvania. Could get some heavy rains there. A stationary front dividing warm, muggy air to sizzling, oppressive air. Temperatures well into the hundreds in Georgia, Alabama, and parts of the Mississippi Valley. Some areas there could pick up 4 inches of rain in some very heavy thunderstorms. Rain moving into the northeast as well later, in Florida as well. We're looking for some sunshine out west, although there could be some showers moving into the northwest. That's what's going on around the country. Here's what's happening in your neck of the woods. We're expecting 79 degrees in Los Angeles. They will have sunshine, 96 showers and thunderstorms later today in Atlanta, 85 in Cleveland, showers and thunderstorms as well, and it'll be 76 in Minneapolis with some rain. And we'll have the week ahead weather a little bit later.
Thanks, Al. Next, the convention and the candidates. This year, the voters, we voters, are finally getting the choice.
Sunday Today is brought to you in part by GE. From plastics to financial services, we bring good things to life.
Freedom is all that matters. Freedom is everything.
There's a new light shining over Eastern Europe.
The Hungarians are waiting for a very long time.
A light of hope, joy, and most of all, a new light of freedom.
Everything is changing. It's wonderful.
It's a miracle.
I'm so happy.
And in this spirit, GE has entered into an historic partnership with a company called Tungsram, Hungary's leading lighting company.
Freedom is something that you have to work for very hard.
Like a dream, a beautiful dream.
At GE, we're proud to play even a small part in helping the Hungarian people build what promises to be a truly brilliant future.
I'm feeling young again.
Since its introduction, umpteen commercials ago, the Lexus LS400 has been hailed by car magazines, raved over by critics, and praised by owners in survey after survey. Which just goes to show that some of the most powerful advertising is the kind you don't have to pay for.
Something big is coming to Gotham City, and it's bringing money and prizes to Choice Hotels like Econo Lodge. Just enter the Choice Hotels Batman Return Sweepstakes. Pick up an entry form at any Choice Hotel, and you could win one of thousands of great Batman prizes, like a Plymouth Voyager or a Choice Batman suitcase containing $250,000 in cash.
Is this a great hotel or what?
Call 1-800-4CHOICE to reserve your room at any of the 7 brands in the Choice Hotels family.
Well, as we know by now, the Democratic National Convention opens here in New York City tomorrow and runs for the next 4 days. It'll get a lot of attention. Conventions may not be what they used to be in terms of their political importance or in terms of the excitement they generate. And still, there is something special about it. It's a time for people to come from all over the nation to gather to talk about their vision of our future. And yes, all eyes will be on Bill Clinton and Al Gore, but perhaps we should really be looking at ourselves now. So let's take a moment and forget George Bush, forget Bill Clinton, and yes, forget Ross Perot. This campaign and this week's convention are not really about them. They're about you and me. What are we prepared to do to support a candidate, a president, and solve our nation's problems? Well, we're not exactly rushing to the polls to change things. Voter turnout in the Democratic primaries this year was the lowest in 20 years. Maybe it is easier to just get angry.
We want jobs!
Angry at government and elected officials who are not delivering what we want at a cost we are willing to pay. And behind the anger, there may even be fear, uncertainty about the future. The latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll shows that 71% of registered voters are worried about where the country is headed, worried about their futures. Yes, there is the economic squeeze. Layoffs make for leaner companies and leaner families who spend less and delay a strong recovery. But the unease goes beyond that. Look at what we have lived through since the last time we elected a president. We won the Cold War and the Gulf War. We can be proud that we're the only surviving military superpower and still ask, so what? Where is the peace dividend? We look at the problems around us, the challenges here at home, know they must be dealt with, but don't know how, or perhaps we just don't want to pay for it in money and effort. But then we see what happens if we do nothing. So perhaps 1992 is a campaign year of national self-recognition. And we don't like what we see when we look in the mirror. And that is why so many people feel we are headed in that wrong direction. And so we hope that one person can solve all that. Isn't that why we elect a president?
And is perhaps that passing the buck if we expect presidents and candidates to solve all our problems? Let's talk about that now with some of our colleagues here. Fellow journalist Kathleen Hall-Jameson of the Annenberg School of Communications. You're studying the media and the political process. Jonathan Alter, media and political expert for Newsweek magazine. Cynthia Tucker, editorial page editor of the Atlanta Constitution. And E.J. Dion, who's covering the campaign for the Washington Post. We saw the turnout was low during the primaries, but I get the feeling something is changing right now. People are getting excited about the prospect of a three-way race, and we may get a real election this fall. People turning out. EJ.
I think people like this election. It's remarkable. Whether they are crazy about the candidates, they're certainly unhappy about the state of the country, but you have a sense that they think they can do something about it or at least register some protest. And I think having three choices is better than two for most people.
I think it's also true that people don't get interested in any presidential campaign until about now. We members of the media start to focus on it a lot earlier, but I think about after the 4th of July is when people begin to really get interested to think about the candidates as individuals and what they've said about the issues.
We've also heard about this anger factor, and there was a poll that came out a few days ago, which I found very interesting and indeed surprising. It shows that the angriest people who really want change are those 50 and over. The most complacent are those 35 and younger. How do you explain that? I would have thought of the other way around.
Oh, those older voters are the ones who are going to vote. You know, most angry, most likely to vote. You know, most complacent, least likely to vote. I think the interesting question is, will the selection of Gore and the first baby boomer ticket be able to do anything, particularly with the baby boomer on the other side with George Bush, to energize the younger voters? I think the answer is no.
And
the older voters know better than the younger voters that things used to be better, that the country's in some, you know, in some trouble. And my sense is it's almost like it's Sunday night in America. You know, the country sort of understands that you got to get up and go to work. The next week, the next few years are going to be quite tough. And finally, it's not morning in America. That's over. People understand the challenge ahead, and what they want to do is sort out which of these candidates can take them in.
All right, now we have this team. We have Clinton and we have Gore. Let's look at a bit of the tape of the announcement this week, because this is part of the choice voters face.
I have chosen is a leader of great strength, integrity, and stature. A father who, like me, loves his children and shares my hunger to turn this economy around, to change our country. The man standing beside me today has what it takes to lead this nation from the day we take office. Senator Al Gore of Tennessee.
Well, there is the Democratic ticket. Hands up for anyone who thinks that this could be a winning Democratic ticket. Oh. Or, all right, could be. I put it in the conditional right there.
It's an easy way to ask it.
Will it be, though?
Well, I think that one of the reasons the older folks are unhappy is they're the last people in the New Deal generation, and they don't really like Republican government. I think another thing about this ticket that's going to be attractive, it may not attract baby boomers, it'll attract older folks, because older folks often like younger people a lot more than younger people themselves do.
I think we need to talk about the strategy of this generational ticket or Southern ticket, whichever way you want to think about it. I think that it carries some risk. Clearly, the Democrats have decided that they have to be serious about the South if they're going to win the presidency again. And that is part of what is going on here. Clinton's very deliberate decision to not look for geographic balance. I think the strategy, however, carries some risk. I think we have to acknowledge the fact that there is still a prejudice abroad in the land against the South. And so it is not merely that Al Gore doesn't bring a big state, but that some Northeasterners and Midwesterners may be turned off by it.
Well, haven't we gone beyond that in a certain way? Because I'm from the north and Midwest in Illinois. I look at an Al Gore and a Bill Clinton, and yes, they're from the South, but those lines start to get blurred, in my mind at least. Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the main point is that they've said the moderates have taken over the party, and we're not going to negotiate with the left-wingers in the party. We are just going to proceed as if this is a new Democratic Party. That's the message that they're trying to convey, and also a very future-oriented party, because the candidate that controls the future often controls the election.
I think the key thing with Gore is this puts the environment on the agenda for the Democrats. Clinton is vulnerable to environmental charges, and so is Bush. Gore can take the environmental case and make it a Democratic strength.
Big in California, too.
So there's balance, at least, in that aspect of the ticket. We're going to have some more ideas, we hope, and insights on the two candidates, also talking about their wives, Hillary and Tipper. They're going to play a very important role in this campaign. We'll be back with that as we continue.
You know, I can still remember the very first candy given to me by my grandfather. It was Werther's Original, and I was 4. I had a little trouble opening that shiny golden wrapper, but then, well, I'll never forget that first taste. Sweet and creamy and just plain good. But there was something else, too. I remember feeling I must be somebody very special when my grandpa gave me his wonderful butter candy. So, now I'm the grandfather. And what else would I give my little grandson but my Werther's Original? He's somebody special, too.
I think that people don't realize how much sugar they eat. You're more concerned about what you put in your car than what you put in your body. You got the sugar, you got the pink stuff, and you got the Equal.
Equal has the great taste of NutraSweet and no saccharin.
I choose Equal.
Live from New York, it's Channel 2 News. Beginning Monday, Texas Democrats lead the National Convention, and 2 News puts you right in the middle of all the action.
The answer is something we'll be...
With live reports led by Ron Stone, plus a nightly wrap-up with Bill Biasa and Linda Laurel on 2 News at 10. To get the inside track on what's really going on behind Decision 92, turn to Channel 2, Houston's 24-hour news channel.
For 30 years, I couldn't find a pair of glasses that fit. Slipping and sliding drove me nuts. Then I went to Lens Crafters. I'm telling you, this is the first place I've been where they know what good fit's all about. Look at this. No matter how bad I treat them, they don't lose their fit. And this pair with spring hinges, they don't even slide when I slice. You want to know something? My Lens Crafters glasses fit better than my hat. Now that's comfort.
Lens Crafters, better fit for greater comfort in about an hour.
My colleagues and I this morning here on Sunday Day are talking about Bill Clinton and Al Gore, but of course that also means talking about their wives, Hillary and Tipper Gore. We know a little bit about Hillary, not that much about Tipper Gore, and one of the more controversial aspects has been what kind of a role, a political career role or a homemaking role, should the candidates' wives play? Well, Hillary Clinton had something to say about that recently. Let's listen to that once again.
You know, I suppose I could have stayed home and baked cookies and had teas, but what I decided to do was to fulfill my profession, which I entered before my husband was in public life. And I've tried very, very hard to be as careful as possible, and that's all I can tell you.
Well, there we are. I think people know that. It's been inscribed in political folklore. Unfair in many ways. But Cynthia, how do you think women are going to react to this? Because Tipper Gore, too, is a very activist, politically oriented wife, isn't she?
Well, one of the most interesting things I have watched in this campaign has been the reaction to Hillary Clinton, which I think has been overwhelmingly negative. And some of the most negative responses I have heard have come from women. So I find that fascinating. Now, Tipper Gore is a very assertive personality, but in a very different sense. She's a homemaker. She has been assertive in talking about family issues. So maybe some of that will provide some balance, if you will, for those who think Hillary Clinton goes too far in the other direction. But I think it is interesting that women seem very turned off by Hillary Clinton.
See, I think Hillary Clinton is stuck with the role of being the sort of ultimate transitional figure in American politics. We always use campaigns to play out all kinds of things we have in our minds. One of them is, how does the family work? How is it supposed to work? She is stuck with that. The other thing is that a lot of Republicans think they can't really tag Bill Clinton with being a liberal, so they're using Hillary Clinton to do that, much as Republicans used Eleanor Roosevelt to do that to Franklin Roosevelt.
This is fascinating. You say a candidate's wife can be, quote, a transitional figure. That's something new in American history.
In a campaign, we work out all kinds of things in campaigns that aren't directly political about ourselves, and I think that Hillary Clinton has become the figure through whom we argue about an awful lot of things about ourselves and our families and that sort of thing.
And more practically speaking, I think Tipper tipped Clinton to pick Gore. She is a real advantage because on this family values issue, because of her role in the rock lyrics debate, she can blunt Quayle and some of the Republican charges on that, and that's a major asset for them. It's a big issue this year.
Well, we're talking around Bill Clinton here, and we're working really back to that character issue. We haven't heard much about it since the primaries. Is that still going to be there, a problem for Bill Clinton after the convention with Tipper and Al Gore by his side?
Not if the speech does what it needs to do. Bill Clinton still isn't known by most people. The story of Bill Clinton's life, the things Bill Clinton identifies with, still haven't gotten through. People in the groups we're looking at still think Bill Clinton must have been raised wealthy, for example. If the convention puts in place the story of Bill Clinton in strong, compelling ways, it makes the character issue tougher to stick.
It's a big speech coming up, isn't it? What does he have to say?
Well, first of all, I think that the character issue is going to be with us through this whole campaign. It always is, and some of these questions are going to linger, and there's nothing he can do about that. I think there's a certain number of voters who are gone, but it's not necessarily a huge chunk of voters. And I think in the speech, if he does nothing else, he's got to convey that he was born a poor kid. It's amazing, as Kathleen said, how many people think that he was born wealthy, partly because of his educational background, partly because he kind of looks the part. You always see him in a tie. And I think that really does have an impact on the way people look at him.
Let's separate the character issue, though, into two distinct parts. It seems to me Bill Clinton has two different problems, one being the allegations of extramarital affairs, and one being the draft-dodging allegation. And I think in the South, it is actually the draft-dodging allegation that hurts him more. Interestingly enough, Al Gore may be able to shore him up there as well, because Gore actually went to Vietnam, whereas our Vice President Dan Quayle didn't.
I divide the character issue differently into personal character and political character. And the challenge for Clinton is going to be to argue that George Bush is lacking in political character by going back on his no new taxes pledge, by saying he was going to create millions of new jobs and not doing it, and so forth. And if he can get that, and the same applies to Ross Perot, who sometimes says things on television that aren't true, that are flatly untrue. So if Clinton can sort of change the tenor of the debate from personal to political character, he's going to be in better shape.
But beyond the character issues and beyond whatever substantive issues may rise to the surface, isn't the real determining factor going to be that famous quote, "It's time for a change"? The most powerful slogan you can have in politics, the equivalent of new and improved for kitchen cleanser. And that this is what we really have to ask ourselves, and Clinton has to ask himself, is this going to be a turning point election? Do people basically want a change?
You got two people fighting to be that candidate of change. That's one of Clinton's problems, is that he's going to have to deal with Ross Perot. I think that the country clearly does want some kind of change, which is why President Bush, who ran proudly as a status quo candidate 4 years ago, wants to say he's the change.
What are you finding, Kathleen, in your focus groups?
Very strong focus up until the abortion decision by the Supreme Court on the change theme with abortion being the issue, and it's now all but disappearing from discussion. The question for Clinton, as I see it, is change about what issues? Can he keep a focus on the economy and on jobs? Can he keep it away from foreign affairs? And can he, as a result, create an avenue into voting decisions which says, yes, change equals Clinton and I get a job? Then you get the young people to vote for him.
Finally, last question, Al Gore, Bill Clinton. It's interesting I put it in that order. Any danger that Al Gore could be seen by some people as the one who should be at the top of the ticket?
Big danger. A lot of callers on call-in programs are already suggesting that. But Clinton has one advantage. Even though he's only slightly older than Gore, he looks older, and he's also slightly taller. So if you see them side by side, you can pick out who the top of the ticket is.
Anytime somebody says this person should be top of the ticket, it raises the prospect that Dan Quayle could be top of the ticket, too.
Aha, it cuts many ways, very subtle. Well, thank you very much, Kathleen, Jonathan, Cynthia, E.J. Dionne, for being with us. We'll continue this as the political year goes down the road. We'll see how Bill Clinton does on that big speech this week at the Democratic Convention. We'll be back here with news and weather in just a moment.
Sunday Today is brought to you in part by Radisson Hotels. Why get a room when you can get a Radisson?
Nobody else sees the world through your eyes. Yours is a style that you just can't disguise. Your whole approach is an original one. So why get a room when you can get a Radisson?
Welcome to Radisson. 250 hotels around the world, as individual as the people who stay in them. Your point of view is distinctly your own, and so is ours.
So why get a room when you can get a Radisson?
Sundays aren't exactly what they used to be. Instead of a day at Grandma's, it's a day at home. And instead of a game of catch, it's baseball on the couch. But at least there's one Sunday that's just as you remember it. Drumstick, the original ice cream sundae in a cone. Rich, creamy ice cream in a chocolate-lined cone, topped with more chocolate and nuts. So while Sundays have changed, Drumstick sundae cones haven't. Drumstick, the great American sundae cone.
Governor Bill Clinton, a survivor of an extraordinary political year. Now the Democrats come together behind their candidate. Join Tom Brokaw, John Chancellor, and the NBC political team for full coverage of the Democratic National Convention, beginning Monday, 9 Central. NBC News, Decision 92, in touch with America.
They know too much.
How do you mean?
Someone asked this Eckert Express photo employee what film speed to use for indoor sports photography under fluorescent lighting.
What happened?
He knew.
We're in trouble.
Express Photo Center in select Eckerd stores.
Since Eckerd always accepts their competitors' photo coupons and advertised specials, shouldn't their competitors always have to guarantee quality as good as Eckerd?
You know, most car dealers just want to sell you a car. We'd like to sell you a dealership.
Hi, I'm Gene Wilson.
Hi, I'm Henry Aguilar.
Hi, I'm Pat Diamond. Hi, I'm Bob Carter.
Hi, I'm Darren Wilder. Hi, I'm Tony Matheson. That's it.
There are nearly 200 great reasons to buy your new Chevrolet from Mac Hike. You've just met 6 of them.
We're talking Gloria Estefan on Christina.
We're back with Sunday Today, and in this half hour, are women tougher on women when it comes to campaigning? We'll be talking about that, but first the news.
And we start with politics, of course, Mary Alice. The Democratic Party convention meets in New York City starting tomorrow to nominate Bill Clinton for president. Clinton arrived in New York yesterday, where he'll spend much of the week working on his acceptance speech, an important speech on Thursday night. He got one important endorsement yesterday from Jesse Jackson, who made his official announcement on his television show. The NAACP is holding its own convention this weekend in Nashville. Bill Clinton and Al Gore got a rousing welcome there. Undeclared presidential candidate Ross Perot also spoke to the black organization, but he seemed to offend many delegates by what some regarded as condescending remarks about blacks.
Financially, at least, it's going to be a long, hot summer, right? Now, I don't have to tell you who gets hurt first when this sort of thing happens, do I? Your people do. Your people do. I know that. You know that. But see, I didn't understand you, sir. Thank you.
People in the crowd there were saying, quote, our people, not you people. Anyway, Ross Perot has apologized to anyone offended by his remarks during his speech there before the NAACP. While Perot and the Democrats were working on the campaign, President and Mrs. Bush spent the weekend relaxing at Kennebunkport. The president is getting in some fishing, boating, and golf. He plans to maintain a low profile during the Democratic convention and will leave Kennebunkport on Tuesday for a trip to the West Coast to attend the All-Star baseball game on Tuesday. According to the latest polls out, the presidential race is a virtual dead heat right now in mid-July. A Los Angeles Times poll showed Bill Clinton with 29%, George Bush with 28%, and Ross Perot with 27%. The margin of error in that poll is 3%. Another poll by Time and CNN found Clinton with 28%, Bush and Perot each at 27%. 6%, about as close as it can be. Let's go overseas now. In the besieged city of Sarajevo, there was an overnight lull in what has been almost continuous fighting there. That will allow delivery of some relief supplies to the city of Sarajevo. But now the fighting has spread to Dubrovnik on the Adriatic coast, and no one believes that the warfare around Sarajevo itself has ended. The president of Bosnia keeps asking the West to intervene and bring a stop to the bloodshed, but so far neither the United States nor European nations want to get that deeply involved militarily. And this story this morning from Vatican City, Pope John Paul II told worshipers today that he will enter a clinic in Rome tonight. The Vatican says he will have tests for an intestinal dysfunction and that he may have to face surgery. That from the Vatican, and that's the news at this hour on this Sunday morning.
Okay, the Democrats are in for a grueling week ahead, but is that terrible weather system also heading this way?
Well, we're going to have some heat, humidity, and some showers. Tomorrow's going to be an awful day for their opening ceremonies. It's here in New York with heat and humidity. Let's take a look right now at the satellite picture, show you what's going on. Look at those thunderstorms blooming up from the mid-Atlantic states right on back to the west. That's all along a stationary front. Let's go underneath the clouds, show you what it looks like, and you can see the strong risk of thunderstorms from Pennsylvania and New York State back through Colorado. They have flash flood watches out until 8 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. In Utah, parts of Utah, out west, it looks like they're going to have plenty of sunshine, some showers down in Florida. That's what's going on around the country. Here's what's happening in your neck of the woods. We're expecting a high today of 79 degrees in the nation's, 94 degrees in the nation's capital with some afternoon thunderstorms. 79 degrees in Los Angeles. They will have sunshine. 73 in Seattle, showers. 89 in Miami with afternoon thunderstorms. And that's the latest up to the moment. Mary Alice?
Okay, and you know, they keep calling 92 the year of the woman in politics. We'll check that one for accuracy when we come back.
This vehicle has a number of features that make it an extremely secure place to put money. So does this one. The Lexus LS 400. With the highest retained value in its class, it's like money in the bank.
Morning breath.
As soon as I have my coffee, it's all gone.
Whether you admit it or not, it's a problem.
Okay, I have morning breath, but it doesn't bother anyone.
Don't be so sure.
Mine's not so bad.
Morning breath's not as bad as you think. It's worse. So get Scope. Its two powerful ingredients kill 90% of the bacteria that cause morning breath.
Was my morning breath really that bad?
There's no denying morning breath, so save your breath with Scope.
It's the surefire hit of the summer. Annie, get your gun. Houston Grand Opera presents the return of the great American musical. Irving Berlin's Annie, Get Your Gun. Starring Kathy Rigby. July 15th through August 2nd. For tickets, call 227-ARTS. Don't miss it.
It's one of the greatest home furnishings events of the year. Finger's gigantic Super Sale Days. Imagine super store-wide savings of 16 to 53% on every item in every department. Save your cash. Buy with no down payment and 0% interest for a full year. Virtually millions of dollars worth of famous brand name home furnishings have been plainly tagged and are on sale now. Plus, no down payment and 0% interest for a full year. It's going on now at all Finger stores.
And we've heard it before. This is the year of the woman in American politics. But in the past, no matter how many women have tried, they only comprised about 5.5% of the federal government and can't seem to break through that glass ceiling. Now, this year, more women than ever are running. 20 for the U.S. Senate, 144 for the House, 6 for governor. Can they change the equation? A lot of women are trying, women who don't have the political power, but sure have the influence.
The last time we celebrated the Year of the Woman was 72 years ago, when women got the vote. Boy, time sure does fly when you're being repressed. Women worked so hard to get the vote, only to find out they had nothing to vote for but men.
Maybe once, but not now. Near record numbers of women are candidates for office this year, and with the fed-up factor among voters running high, the chances for record numbers of women being elected are considered good. It gave some of the biggest names in Hollywood reason to sing at a recent $500 a ticket fundraiser for 9 Democratic women running for U.S. Senate. What would Jeanette Rankin think? She was the first woman elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1917. Or Hattie Caraway, the first woman to go to the U.S. Senate. She inherited her husband's seat in 1931 and was re-elected twice. From those groundbreakers through the 1980s, women had neither the networks of supporters nor the campaign treasuries today's crowd has. The 2 biggest stars this year are newcomers. Carol Moseley Brown left her job as a Cook County recorder of deeds to defeat champion vote-getter Senator Alan Dixon in the Illinois primary. And 50-year-old fundraiser Lynn Yackel of Pennsylvania won her primary and has a good chance of beating Republican 2-term Senator Arlen Specter. Both were helped by the treatment of Anita Hill in the Clarence Thomas hearings. Both were put over the top by women voters. But the 2 women running for U.S. Senate in California, Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein, would have won their primaries without a single woman's vote. Men gave them their victories. Even if women win in record numbers, which means being able to take a political punch and land one, they would still represent a fraction of the male representation in government. But this year, when the political buzzword is change, it's worth remembering that all a woman has to do to represent change is show up.
It may sound too idealistic to say that women, just by virtue of the fact that they are women, will do a better job in government than men have done. But I think it's fair to say they could not possibly do any worse.
With us now are Geraldine Ferraro, the only woman ever to be on a major party ticket as Walter Mondale's vice presidential nominee. Ellen Malcolm, head of Emily's List, among the top 1% of political action committees in the nation. And joining us from Washington, Colorado Representative Pat Schroeder, a member of the House of Representatives for 20 years. Thanks all of you for being with us. Pat, no question that women have made great strides in the past 20 years, but why has the progress been so slow? What's holding them back? Is it money? Is it opportunity? Is it psychology?
I think it's all of the above, and I think I'd also add the Cold War. I think for a long time, the Cold War was always a way that women just kind of got lost. If you remember the discussion about how silly Dukakis looked in tanks, we looked even sillier running around in tanks or trying to do Rambo imitations. And with that gone, and the domestic agenda being much more focused on, we're in much better shape. Okay. But I do think the money and everything else that you mentioned certainly play.
Jerry?
Well, it's a different time. What's happened over the past 12 years is people have looked at what's been going on in government, and they're not happy with what's going on, and so they're looking for change. And women represent change. Even if they're in office for 20 years, as Pat has been, they're still outsiders because they're still a minority. And so when they talk about the economy, when they talk about education, when they talk about long-term plans, it's a different type of approach. It represents a new way to deal with problems.
Ellen, what's been the biggest hurdle?
Well, I think it's all the factors, and why we're so excited about this election is that all the factors are going our way this year. We see all kinds of money coming into campaigns because of the Thomas Hill hearings. We have terrific political opportunities because of redistricting and reapportionment, and as Jerry said, voters are looking for change. They're turning to women candidates.
Pat, once they get into office, what impact can they really have? Now, you said recently that congresswomen are not powerful. You're supposed to play ball and not embarrass your colleagues with women's issues.
Well, always Washington has much preferred women to be cheerleaders and not real players. They want to make the calls, and then we go out and jump up and down and say, wasn't that terrific? But the great thing is we see more women coming in and getting more gravitas and getting more into the system. It's going to be much harder to get them to do that. When you get the numbers so that they really need our votes, and when we've been 5.5%, as you can point out, they really rarely need our votes on anything. And of course, we want to send Jerry to the Senate because there it's like 2%. So if we can break through those glass ceilings and get some numbers, then we will be needed a lot more.
So you're looking for critical mass.
Absolutely.
In the voting.
Critical mass is the word.
Let me just add one thing, though, to that, Mary Alice. There's a real difference between the House and Senate. The Senate, when you get in there, as Barbara Mikulski has done, she's only one person, but she has in and of herself, you know, been a force because she has been very, very vocal on the issues that are affecting this country. If this country elects 6 women to the United States Senate next year, we become a critical mass, and that can make a difference. Yeah, it really can. And you pointed out some on the initial piece.
Ellen, is that likely? 6?
I think it's possible. I mean, we have to be realistic. Barbara Mikulski's the only one, but I think we have a chance to do that.
Hasselhoff is the Republican.
Well, on the Democratic side, but I also think that the message that'll come out of this election, if we elect all these women, is that women are a different, powerful political force, which will make a big difference.
The voters, do women vote for women's issues? Should they vote for a woman just because she's a woman?
No, not at all. I don't think any of us would vote for a woman just because she's a woman. They want to hear what she has to say. But what we're seeing now is that the women candidates are out there with very powerful messages about domestic issues, about change, and the voters are responding to that.
Okay, let's talk about campaigning. Pat, when you pulled out of the presidential race, you run for the presidency, you cried. Now, men can cry, and they show compassion. Women are not allowed to. It's not the way that your tears were read. Is there a difference in campaigning?
Oh, there's a terrific difference, and I think we have to be very careful this year. I am so excited on one hand, and yet I keep wanting to leash it in because I fear very much that all the negative advertising is going to be trying to target women. Secondly, we've never felt comfortable with what women should wear or how they should look as a candidate. They don't have a uniform like the men do, the blue suit, the red tie, the white shirt, all that stuff.
And we all remember Jerry's red dress.
Exactly. So you never know.
But you know, there's a real difference, Mary Alice, between this year and 1984. In 1984, you know that also, you're not old enough to know that old song, which it says you got to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. Well, in 1984, what we were trying to do was eliminate the negative. They keep on saying a woman can't run for national office, a woman doesn't understand arms control, a woman doesn't do this.
But can she take a punch and land one?
Well,
can women do that?
That's what's happening in this election cycle. They're saying, yes, women can do these things. They're accentuating the positive.
So if their opponents go negative big time, the women can do it too.
Well, we certainly saw that in Texas with Ann Richards' race.
Right.
I mean, you know, these women candidates are tough and they know how to play the game. I think one of the things about electing all these women is that voters will get used to seeing women. Jerry did that in '84. She gave us a model. She gave us something to understand about how women could run. And I think if we get a lot of these victories in this year, it's not going to be quite as unusual. We won't have to focus on the clothes, for example.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for being with us. I wish we had another half hour. Ellen Malcolm, Jerry Ferraro, and Pat Schroeder. And next on Sunday Today, Al finds out what $20 will buy in the Big Apple during convention week.
Suddenly, vitamins are all over the news.
Fact is, 2 out of 3 adults don't get all that's recommended in their diets. 2 out of 3?
Wonder if I'm getting the vitamins I should.
There is a cereal, though, that has 100% of 10 essential vitamins. Whole Grain Total.
Of course.
Just one bowl gives you a full day's allowance of these vitamins. Total. One bowl, 100%.
With all the vitamin news, I'm eating Total.
Of course.
When Tokyo Electric Power turned to GE for its advanced turbine technology, it gave Tokyo the largest, most efficient power plant of its kind in the world, which means more jobs for people back home and a better future for the people of Japan.
Nobody notices my bell tones. It's true. When I wear these tiny canal hearing aids, the only thing people notice is me, doing the things I like to do. And Belltone did it all for me. The hearing test, personal attention, professional service. My Belltones even have the clear voice background noise filter. So what are you waiting for? My Belltones don't slow me down.
Call 1-800-647-5300 and receive the Belltone Guide to Better Hearing free.
of course. The Democratic Convention starting tomorrow here in New York City. They're more than about issues and candidates and campaign strategies. It's also about fun, isn't it? It's about money.
It's about bringing money into a city that needs it. And how much does New York City say they're going to
About between 100 and 125 mil out of that.
help.
That'll be good.
Significant.
I'd vote for that.
Fill a few potholes.
That's for sure. And as the Democrats for the delegates for the Democratic National Convention pour into New York City, there are thousands and thousands of New Yorkers who are working to put a real shine on the Big Apple. After all, looking good is good politics.
We've used it for every event over the last 5 years, some 50 or 60 outdoor events. It has rained the day before, it has rained up until the event, it has rained within 10 minutes after, but it has never rained on.
Barnett Lipton says this Indonesian Thai leaf stops rain from pouring on anyone's party.
Now, the tradition is that the leaves tell you where to put them.
This time he's throwing the party for the press.
And typically, when you place a tea leaf, you place it on its back like this, pointed away from you.
They're in New York this week to cover the 1992 Democratic National Convention. There's plenty happening in New York surrounding the Democratic National Convention this week. Convention fever is out there, and New Yorkers are trying to put on their best faces. For the 40,000 conventioneers scheduled to arrive, there's everything from a free Broadway concert to a free ride on the subway.
We're trying to get them to use mass transit in New York City because we believe it's the best way to get around.
And here's some advice from some veteran New York City strap hangers to all you out-of-towners.
Never travel alone, that's for sure, and watch the hours that you ride.
Everyone's pretty much native New Yorkers. They would help out. If you're in the wrong neighborhood, then don't ask any questions. Just keep going. Take a cab. Trust me. Take a cab.
Even the cabbies are getting into the act. They've been told by New York City Mayor David Dinkins that they should try to be courteous, to say hello, thank you, good day. A lot of out-of-the-ordinary stuff for them. But some people remain cynical.
They have sorry attitude and sorry manners. I mean, there's no please or thank you. And, even though I tip like 25%, they still, they about take me off at the door when they leave.
Cirque Restaurant may help you?
The city's restaurant owners are looking forward to the madness of the convention so much that the toniest bistros are offering lunches for only $19.92. Get it? $19.92? A $15 discount. And here's what you get.
We have chilled tomato soup with eggplant caviar. For a main course, you have a choice of a chicken curry salad or a roasted monkfish. And to top it off with dessert, we have a creme brulee, which is our house specialty.
That sounds great. Only problem is Le Cirque is already booked for the entire convention week. But then again, for $19.92, you can always grab a bunch of these anywhere on the streets of New York, al fresco.
You could get 19 hot dogs and a can of soda.
And a little left over for Bromo. So much for advice for conventioneers. Coming up next, we have a history lesson on the Democratic Party. Pay attention, there may be a quiz. That and more when Sunday Today continues.
Something big is coming to Gotham City, and it's bringing money and prizes to choice hotels like Econo Lodge. Just enter the Choice Hotels Batman Return Sweepstakes. Pick up an entry form at any Choice Hotel, and you could win one of thousands of great Batman prizes, like a Plymouth Voyager or a Choice Batman suitcase containing $250,000 in cash.
Is this a great hotel or what?
Call 1-800-4CHOICE to reserve your room at any of the 7 brands in the Choice Hotels family.
This just isn't me. This just isn't my kind of luck.
Think about your daily dreams and what you would do if you won $1 million out of America. Miracles can happen. Publishers Clearinghouse, the house where dreams come true.
It's clearance time again at Worthington Chevrolet, and all the 92s have got to go. Now listen, we've got 16 brand new 92 Chevy 3/4-ton van conversions left. Take your pick, just $19,500, and you keep the rebates. Optional equipment is extra. Hey, and check this out. All of these cars and all of these trucks have been reduced to just $69.95. They've all got to go. Take your pick, just $69.95, only $98 a month. Worthington Chevrolet on the Southwest Freeway at Hillcroft.
America sells more office supplies for less than Office Depot. Nobody.
You know, there's still a guarded suspicion among some Democratic delegates that they belong to a party that can't win. It wasn't always so. The party of Thomas Jefferson virtually dominated for more than a century. It was FDR's post-Depression New Deal that forged the coalition of blacks, laborers, academics, urbanites in the South that proved unbeatable for years. From Harry Truman to Lyndon Johnson, the Democrats could use federal power and government spending to play the role of society's protector, and it worked as long as the economy was okay and no explosive, divisive issues arose to tear it all apart. Then came 1968.
How many years must a mountain exist?
Chicago, 1968. Vietnam was tearing at the heart of American life. Two men from the heart of America, Minnesota, represented the battle lines. Inside the convention, Senator Hubert Humphrey was painted as the hawk. Outside, Senator Gene McCarthy, the dove. The war was the rallying point, but the real collision was over differing visions of America and who would share its future.
We wouldn't have to have Gestapo tactics in the streets of Chicago.
Chicago Mayor Richard Daley, among history's toughest political bosses, watched his machine and his party surrender to an increasingly militant civil rights movement and gays and feminists demanding shared power. That was when the Democrats lost the middle class and the election.
We will restore the government to the people of this country.
Miami, 1972. George McGovern turned away from his party's machine to the new faces of alienation in the country. His convention platform decreed, we must restructure the social, political, and economic relationships throughout the entire society in order to ensure equitable distribution of wealth and power. It sounded downright socialist and looked like a convention of the counterculture. Marijuana, amnesty, abortion, and lettuce boycotters filled the TV screens. McGovern won the nomination by turning his back on the traditional Democratic base, then tried to win the election by campaigning the old way. Too late. The Democrats had been labeled the party of special interests, narrowing their base even further. They lost again.
And while I'm president, I'll never tell a lie.
In 1976, Jimmy Carter promised he wouldn't lie to us. After Watergate, that sounded good. He won and told us the country was in trouble and couldn't spare us the humiliation of the Iran hostage crisis. And by 1980, when the Carter forces were clashing horns with Ted Kennedy's Klan, the economy and America's standing in the world were in a free fall. The remaining Democratic base answered a Republican's question.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
By defecting wholesale to the GOP. They lost big.
I see an America too young to quit, too courageous to turn back.
But in 1984, even with Gary Hart's challenge of new ideas, the old liberalism still won out. The Republicans had carved out the core issue, the economy, as their own, leaving Walter Mondale to focus on social programs as a way to woo the old Democratic alliance, which no longer existed.
Mr. Reagan will raise taxes, and so will I. He won't tell you. I just did.
They lost even bigger. That landslide defeat led the Democrats to create Super Tuesday, the Southern primary strategy to win back the conservative South. Two liberals dominated the day, and the 1988 convention was split again between Michael Dukakis and Jesse Jackson. They opened the way for Republicans to play the race card, and lost. And so we come to two youthful Southerners who have promised a power shift to the baby boom generation. They have so far avoided the liberal litmus tests and may yet capitalize on the weak economy. FDR's coalition, blacks, laborers, academics, urbanites, the South, the middle class, have lost jobs and social programs under the Republicans. Might they be ready for a New Deal? And coming up in the next half hour, 92's Will Rogers types with some well-turned pokes at the politicians.
I think that people don't realize how much sugar they eat. You're more concerned about what you put in your car
than what you put in your body. You got the sugar, you got the pink stuff, and you got the Equal.
Equal has the great taste of NutraSweet and no saccharin.
I choose Equal.
Want more from your Raisin Bran than more of the same? Go nuts! Take the raisin and the almond nut and put them both together. Cover raisins with the almond nut and make it all taste better. Raisin Nut Bran. Nut-covered raisins, all it takes. Raisin Nut Bran. Plus almond chunks and crispy flakes for a hearty, nutty taste that goes beyond ordinary Raisin Bran. Add the raisin and the almond nuts, you're gonna like it better. Why stop at raisins when you can go nuts?
Nobody else sees the world through your eyes. Yours is a style that you just can't disguise. Your whole approach is an original one. So I get a room when you can get a rider, son.
This week, the Democratic Convention comes to New York. Join Bryant Gumbel and Katie Couric with Bill Clinton, Mario Cuomo, Jimmy Carter, and others. This week on the show America loves to watch today.
Monday, his jump shot made him king of Madison Square Garden. Now he returns as keynote speaker of the Democratic Convention. Meet Senator Bill Bradley with Tom Brokaw on NBC Nightly News.
I'm here in this auto graveyard to demonstrate New Finish, the once-a-year car polish. Simply wipe it on and wipe it off. There's no rubbing, no buffing. Look how New Finish restored a deep, hard shine to even this weather-beaten old car. You see, New Finish is not a wax. It's a space-age polymer formula that shines better and lasts longer.
And here's proof. An independent laboratory tested New Finish against several leading brands of car polish. After simulating a full year of varying weather, New Finish had the highest gloss and actually retained 90% of its original shine.
Next, we polished this car with New Finish and ran it through 52 car washes. After all the harsh detergents and scrubbing, the water still beads. You'll find New Finish is great for fiberglass boats, too. So get New Finish, the once-a-year car polish. And between polishings, use New Finish car wash to clean your car.
New Finish Liquid, rated #1 by leading magazines. Available at Hilo Auto, Kroger, Chief Auto, Walgreens, AutoZone, Pettigrew Smith, Eckerd Drug, and Kmart.
Get the inside track on the Democratic Convention Monday on Channel 2 News.
Just a couple of minutes ago, we were listening to the recent troubled history of the Democratic Party, Mary Alice's report, and in a moment we're going to talk now with Gary Hart, who played a key role in that party history. He was George McGovern's campaign manager in '72, then a U.S. Senator, ran for the White House and failed. We're talking to him also with NBC's John Chancellor from Madison Square Garden, who's covered many, many conventions. We'll get his thoughts and insights on what's going to happen this week. But first, we have the news.
And at the top of the news this morning, the Democratic Party begins its convention tomorrow in New York. You know that already. Delegates will nominate Bill Clinton for president and Al Gore for vice president. Clinton arrived in town last night and plans to spend much of this week polishing the speech of his life, his acceptance speech for Thursday night. And Clinton got some good news, Jesse Jackson's endorsement, which he made on his own TV show. Clinton and Gore were in Nashville yesterday speaking at the NAACP convention, and they got an enthusiastic reception. Not so undeclared presidential candidate Ross Perot, who spoke earlier. Some delegates were offended by his remarks that referred to blacks as you people.
Now, I don't have to tell you who gets hurt.
Also attending the Democratic Convention in New York, South African black leader Nelson Mandela. He will be the guest of Party Chairman Ron Brown on Wednesday, the same day Mandela is to address the United Nations Security Council in New York. Now, even before the Democratic Convention opened, there were a number of demonstrations in New York City. Several hundred abortion rights activists stopped anti-abortion demonstrators from blocking the door of a clinic. It was peaceful. 2 other demonstrations resulted in 6 arrests. And overseas, there was an overnight lull in the fighting around the city of Sarajevo, and United Nations soldiers have opened a corridor for delivery of relief supplies. But the fighting continues near the city of Dubrovnik on the Adriatic coast. Croatian tanks and artillery have been pounding Serbian positions. Meantime, the president of Bosnia again has asked the United States and European countries to intervene. Now, here are some of the stories coming up in the week ahead. Yitzhak Rabin will be sworn in as the new Prime Minister of Israel on Monday. Outgoing Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir held his last cabinet meeting today. On Tuesday, the best of the National and American Leagues will be in San Diego for the annual All-Star Game. And on Wednesday, Bill Clinton will be nominated for president at the Democratic Convention. He will give his acceptance speech Thursday night. NBC will have convention coverage at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings. On Thursday, our coverage will begin at 9:30 Eastern. And that's the news.
Except for the weather news and the week ahead, right?
You betcha. Let's take a look, see what's going on. First of all, a quick check of what's happening for today. You will see, again, as far as our week's temperatures, above normal conditions here in the southeast and also down into the mid-Atlantic states, below normal in the west coast, around the Rockies and such. And as you take a look at the precipitation, a wide swath of wet weather from the Rockies right across into the mid-Atlantic and northeast, scattered showers, Gulf Coast, dry weather up and down the west coast as well. And for today, chance of some heavy thunderstorms from the Colorado Rockies all the way back to western New York and western Pennsylvania. Heavy thunderstorms in Florida. Going to be downright oppressive in the Gulf Coast and southwest states, and we're looking for the possibility some heavy thunderstorms as well in Utah. That's what's going on around the country. Here's what's happening in your neck of the woods. Expect a high today of 84 degrees in Chicago, possibility of some heavy thunderstorms there, showers later on in New York City, 85 degrees, 94 Phoenix, Arizona, heat-based thunderstorm or two in the afternoon, and Atlanta, 96, showers and thunderstorms. And that's your weather for the week ahead.
Thanks, Al. As we continue this morning on Sunday Today, next, Gary Hart and John Chancellor, campaigns and conventions. We'll be right back.
Presenting the Accord EX from Honda with a new, more powerful engine. A refined suspension system for excellent handling and cornering. Plus a driver's side airbag and anti-lock brakes.
At a Stouffer resort, something's always in bloom. But the most beautiful thing about a Stouffer resort is that people blossom here too. Stouffer Hotels and Resorts. You can depend on our good name.
Don't miss the greatest used car buying opportunity this summer. Hi, folks. Charlie Prentice here at Galahad Toyota on the North Freeway with more good news about the big top 10 sale. You have until 7 o'clock on Sunday to come out and check out cars like this 1990 Celica GT. Automatic, air conditioning, sunroof, loaded with options, just $11,995 under the big top. Or this immaculate 1984 Ford Bronco 2 4x4, just $49.88. You've got to get here by Sunday at 7 o'clock, folks, on the North Freeway, Galahad Toyota.
I'm on the road day in and day out. It's, hey, taxi, stop, and, cabby, quick, stop here. I know the value of good brakes. My livelihood depends on it. And when I'm off duty, our lives depend on good brakes. That's why I depend on Meineke.
At Meineke, we do brakes, and we do them right. We analyze the whole system, pinpoint the problem, and fix it, period.
No matter why you're on the road, you can depend on brakes from Meineke. I do.
Here's a historical political footnote. 20 years ago today, George McGovern won his party's nomination as Democratic presidential candidate. And as we saw just a few minutes ago, that event profoundly changed the direction of the party and the voters' attitudes towards it. A person who can talk with knowledge and from experience about what happened then and is happening now is Gary Hart, because he was there.
Gary Hart, he was instrumental in shaping Democratic Party politics for almost 2 decades. First as the young campaign manager for George McGovern's losing bid for the presidency in 1972. He was also among those who helped open the party up to minorities and a more liberal agenda. Then Hart won a Senate seat from Colorado. Later, he launched his own presidential campaign in 1984, challenging the old Democratic Party liberalism of Walter Mondale. Finally, a personal scandal early in the 1988 campaign ended his last run for the White House and also his political career.
And now I clearly should not go forward.
Well, Gary Hart is an international consultant specializing in trade with the Soviet Union these days, and he joins us now from Washington, D.C. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
We look back 20 years, Gary, to 1972, the McGovern nomination. You were as campaign manager. In hindsight, was that a terrible mistake for the party? Did it go down the wrong road?
I think it was a terrible mistake if the party had not
opened itself up to the people who were not part of the political process. I think we found out in Chicago, as your earlier film showed, that a party that was being conducted up to that time behind closed doors was not a party that was going to last very long. And I think the reforms that were carried out between 1968 and 72 really saved the party. Senator McGovern, because of his own beliefs against the war in Vietnam, managed to get the nomination against great odds and against a party establishment still hanging on, but he won it fair and square under the rules that the party itself established.
But that was then. Today is today. We have Clinton and Gore on the ticket. They're going in quite a different direction. They are placing themselves really as moderates. They're going after the Reagan Democrats, the white suburban voters. Is this the fact, the reality of politics today? Is this what the Democratic Party has to become in order to win?
Well, I think my own view is that the left-right distinctions that largely prevail in Washington and within the political elites miss the point. The issue in this country today, I think, is whether to go forward or go backward. President Bush and Vice President Quayle represent the status quo in the past. This ticket of two new generation Democrats really represent the future. I'm not so sure they have moved to the center so much as they have moved forward. The ideas and issues that Governor Clinton and Senator Gore are campaigning on are future-oriented issues. And I have always seen politics more in a future-past alignment, if you will, rather than a left-right alignment.
Well, and I come at this from a different direction. Many voters have seen the Democrats, frankly speaking, as being beholden to special interest groups, big labor, for example, other interest groups. And Clinton has tried to distinguish or distance himself from that. Isn't that a smart move on his behalf? Again, facing the realities today.
Well, again, my own view is that most Americans have seen both parties as beholden to special interest groups. There's no secret that the Republican Party represents corporate America and the wealthy establishment of America. I think the Democratic Party, a coalition party, struggles continually to be an open party and one that represents as many people as possible. I would say that the society itself has organized itself into interest groups in the past 50 years. The Democratic Party has no choice but to deal with the groups as they find them.
Now, you know Bill Clinton back in '72. You hired him as your McGovern campaign chairman in Arkansas. How did he strike you then?
Actually, we assigned him to Texas as the coordinator there, yes. He was very bright, clearly very interested in public service and public life, and he has given the last 20 years of his life to public service. He is really part of that generation that really began to be motivated by John Kennedy in 1960. And I see this election as the culmination, really, of the revolution that John Kennedy brought about by challenging young people to give something back to their country. I think he is extremely well motivated and has put together a distinguished career as Senator Gore has.
Well, Gary Hart, you're also part of that generation. Are you going to miss not being at this Democratic convention, being part of it?
No, not at all. I still find ways to make contributions, and I hope to all my life. I have never, you mentioned earlier about my career being over. I never thought of it as a career. It was an opportunity to serve, and I think that opportunity will arise again.
All right, Gary Hart, thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Now let's go to the convention site at Madison Square Garden, where NBC's John Chancellor will be reporting events along with Tom Brokaw and the NBC convention team. Tom, John, how many conventions is this right now? We're back to, what, 56?
Well, I started in 1952, so this is my 19th convention, believe it or not. I won the job, you know, in a Boy Scout contest, Gary.
Oh, really? Well, you got a lot of merit badges since then. How does this 92 convention and the Republican one to follow stack up compared to all the others you've covered over the last 40 years?
Well, the conventions are no longer cognitive, sovereign assemblies. They're really ratifications of what voters have done in the primaries. And the parties, actually, this is a big party show, but the Democratic Party has not had a lot to do with what went on this year so far. And so what we're getting is a show, not a convention in that sense. But the speeches will be very interesting. The speakers are good. They're always fun. And there's usually a little suspense.
Well, it's not just the convention itself which has changed. Television coverage of conventions is changing dramatically. We're going to show you a little tape of what's happened between 1948 and today. Here's what's... This was 1948, black and white, primitive television, Thomas Dewey.
Special bulletin here. Garrick, there were, in 1950, there were 9% of American homes with television sets.
Well, here we see some of the NBC mobile units, and there's Chet Huntley and David Brinkley up at the booth, the Sky booth, which you still employ.
Let's get on with it.
And there's a young John Chancellor on the convention floor and a young Garrick Utley in 1972 attire back there. My goodness, can you believe it? And there's John Chancellor today. You look much better today than I do, John.
Well, we don't have to wear the funny beanies that we used to have with radio antenna coming out of them or the earphones. There'll be some of that. You'll see that here this year. But the technology now is nothing compared to what it used to be. It was terribly cumbersome in those old days.
Now, of course, the coverage is going to be different in another way, too. You, Tom, and the NBC colleagues will be on the air each night for an hour or more, but also we have an alliance now with PBS, so people can watch it throughout the evening, correct?
We've made an arrangement with the McNeil-Lehrer report so that from 8 until 10, most nights of the convention, we will be working with them to bring you the story of the convention on their channels. And then from 10 until 11, 9:30 to 11 on Thursday night, we'll be on NBC.
Now, you've seen so many conventions going back to Eisenhower and Stevenson in 1952. Tell us a bit about Clinton and Gore, your perspective. Is this a ticket that can get elected, that can change the Democratic Party's fortunes?
I think, without being partisan, I think this is quite a good ticket, and I was fascinated to hear what Gary Hart had to say. The reformation of this party and the pushing it in a more liberal direction has not been very successful at the presidential level. Out of the last 6 presidential elections, the Democrats have lost 5. I think with the more centrist and moderate ticket that they put together now with Senator Gore and Governor Clinton, I think their chances of winning the election are increased.
John, this may be the final campaign or conventions you cover for NBC. I know you're going to be at future conventions, but going back over the 40 years, what are you going to miss most about what happens in those halls and on the floor?
I think the uncertainty and the drama that sometimes comes over these conventions. Also, sometimes they really are great hinges of political history. In 1964, the Goldwater people seized the Republican Party. They stole the party from the Wall Street wing of it, and that brought us to Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan and George Bush. It was terribly important for the United States. Occasionally, these conventions change our lives.
And so we'll be looking for what happens, what might change this coming week. Thanks, John. We'll be tuning in for you and their colleagues on the convention coverage this coming week. And, of course, one of the more memorable television moments of convention coverage involved John Chancellor at the Republican Convention in 1964. Who can forget it?
That the press should be allowed and the radio and television should be allowed to do their work at a convention on television. And if static begins to interfere with my signal, it's because I'm being taken down off the arena now by these policemen, and I'll check in later. This is John Chancellor somewhere in custody.
John, call us when you can.
All cars are made with sheets of metal. But one of these sheets is actually a sandwich of steel, resin, and steel used by Lexus to help quiet the cabin of the LS400. Care to guess which one?
We'll be back after these messages.
The rush is on for the incomparable new GE Profile refrigerator. The GE Profile is full of smart ideas, like a shelf that tucks away for tall things, and shelves that glide out so you can find things. It's called Smart Space Design. Smart ideas that let you put things in, take things out, and clean things up so quickly and easily that you'll never again miss your favorite commercials.
Greater love has no one than this, to lay down his life for his friends. That's what Jesus Christ said to all of us. He gave his life that he might be the greatest friend that we could ever have. If you'd like to know more about that best of all friends, call us at the Memorial Church of Christ. We'll send you a free tape about Jesus, our friend.
Call 464-0271, Memorial Church of Christ, 900 Echo Lane, Houston.
7 high, 750. You got it, $750. 7 high, 7 high, 7 high. Sold.
Hello, I'm Mark Thomas. I'd like to invite you to an exciting auction this week on behalf of the RTC and other national accounts. Tuesday, July 14th through Sunday, July 19th, including over 500 desks, 300 leather chairs, hundreds of computers, copiers, and fax machines, mahogany conference and dining tables, carved chairs, grandfather clocks, 9 automobiles, including Jaguar, Mercedes, BMW, and Porsche, new 30-foot power boats, over 150 original oil paintings. Call 682-0475.
In an effort to provide you with the most well-rounded political analysis of the presidential race, we've reconvened our panel of political humorists as we get ready for the Democratic National Convention. Joining us from San Francisco, Will Durst, who still refuses to join us here in the studio. He's going to be doing a special convention show at Marin's Veteran Auditorium on July 18th. And joining us here in... That's right. You're the bad guy. We can make fun of you. You're in the monitor. Joining us here in New York, political impressionist Jim Morris, who's going to be appearing at the Ballroom here in New York City until July 26th, and Richard Belzer, who's appearing at the Bantam Cinema in Bantam, Connecticut tonight, and will also be covering the Democratic Convention for Comedy Central. Welcome, gentlemen. Will, you're out west. Is there a certain view out there that about the political race now, especially the Democrats with Gore and Clinton?
Well, I think we see it as kind of like the Stepford ticket. I thought it was a deft move on the Democrats' part. I mean, they've really locked up the white male, Ivy League educated Southern Baptist vote. On this, they can do it.
Well, now, guys, there's been a lot of stuff in the press. We've a lot of things have happened since we were last together. We're going to roll a little bit of tape of.
Can I just say something?
Okay, sure.
I personally think it was a brilliant choice. I mean, to pit Al Gore against Dan Quayle, it's going to screw him up totally. Do you know how many E's are in the name of the state that Al Gore is from?
Tennessee. About 16?
That's right. Well, what do you think about it, Rich?
Well, I think 2 pot smokers running for president, one who inhaled and one didn't, is a new wave of American politics.
Sure.
And it's very encouraging.
The wives compliment each other as well.
Yeah.
Right. One bakes cookies and the other doesn't, right?
Now, wait a minute. One listens to Prince records and the other one doesn't.
What did you say, Will?
I said Tipper Gore. Sounds like something you get when you poke a yuppie.
Tipper Gore.
Let's take a look. Dan Quayle, of course, got in a little hot water when talking about Murphy Brown.
I wear their scorn as a badge of honor.
Okay.
I wear their scorn as a badge of honor. What a speaker. I just imagine Jefferson was like that, or Lincoln. I can't believe how I stood
You
up
want to
and...
talk about... You're going to criticize my VP?
V-E-E-P.
Dan cares about family values. I mean, after all, where would Dan be without his family? Probably another name on the Vietnam Memorial. That's
Well...
Well, I think picking Gore is a great choice. I mean, obviously, they won't have to send Gore to grade schools where he'll lose spelling bees to 12-year-olds. I don't think they'll have to worry about that.
Well, what about, we saw Bill Clinton on Arsenio Hall. I mean, we don't know where he stands on the deficit, but we know where he stands on playing the saxophone.
Well, he actually said after that show, no new saxes, and I think that's a very... And for a guy who doesn't inhale, he didn't play too bad, so it wasn't bad.
He was also, asked the Sister Soldier question there, and, I've had this question before. All I objected to there was that when she said that since blacks kill blacks every week, why not take 1 week and kill white people? What I'd like to know is which week and where will this killing take place? I've said if it were in Houston the week of the Republican convention, I don't think I'd have a problem. I don't think I'd have a problem with that.
Well, what do you do with this whole Sister Soldier thing? What did you think about that? Will?
Sorry, I can't hear you guys.
Oh, well, it was really fun. Can you hear us now?
Yeah. What?
Okay, what did you think about Sister Soldier, that whole Bill Clinton Sister Soldier thing?
Well, I think he's getting in a very interesting area. He's trying to relate to the young people. He went on Arsenio, played sax with the band, and took an early lead in the talent portion of this pattern. Although I hear H. Ross Perot does a dead-on Barney Fife impression. What song has dropped out? He had the swimsuit competition nailed.
Well, it's because I had to swim to prove that I was a healthy man. The word cancer frightens people. But I guess to say that me and my Speedos frighten people even more.
Very much so. Like what about smuggling topsoil?
What about H. Ross Perot? I mean, the most important guy.
With you people. You people. Well, you know, for me, doing Ross Perot, I don't look a thing like the guy, but the important thing here, of course, is the ears and the nose. Are you with me? Are you with me? I love it.
I mean, do you get a sense, guys, that he's having a big impact on the Democratic campaign?
Well, he had a big impact on the Republican Party when he gave $2 million to Oliver North, but I don't know how much money he's given to any Democratic covert operations. So.
And as a matter of fact, when he gave that money, he was taking a page out of... Jerry Brown says he was the first person to do that $100 contribution.
Right.
Well, it was all small bills. You see? Here's what we're doing now.
You get a bunch of experts in a room, a blank piece of paper, you lock the doors, you don't let them out till problem solved. Long story short, problem solved. Now, you got black people, right? You just put them all in one state. Long story short, problem solved. You got gay people, you put pink bows on them, you'll know who they are. Long story short, problem solved. You got Jewish people, put them armbands on them. Long story short, problem solved. That's all there is to it. If he grows a little mustache, I'm moving to France.
Well, how do you feel about Perot?
I feel like I'm out of the loop, man. I'm staring at a blank screen. I'm enjoying you guys more than... I think the only advantage in electing a billionaire instead of a politician is we eliminate the middleman. Right. You can make it president on Exxon and get it over with.
What do you guys expect to come out of this week? Are you looking for anything special?
Well, as the press has been saying, this is a dinosaur. These kids, I mean, we already know who's going to win. The thing is, I'm looking forward to seeing Bill be compared to Mario. Because as you recall, last time, Mario Cuomo gave an incredible speech. He said things like, life is better than death. Profound. Anyway, so war is better than peace, you know, that kind of writing. But no, it was a great delivery, but I'm looking forward to see how Clinton's supposed to give his speech. And one thing that I think is naive about Americans and the press, and I'm not slamming you guys, but is that everyone says this is the most important speech of his life. They always say that about politicians, and they always do this speech, and it never really changes anything. Well, do you remember one speech that ever really shook up the world outside of World War II,
Not one. But we got to go now. So, well, Richard Belzer, Jim Morris, Will Durst out in San Francisco. When we come back, a preview of a special edition of Meet the Press and some final thoughts as Sunday Today continues.
Meet the Press.
Meet the Press.
Recently, DuPont announced that its energy unit Conoco would pioneer the use of new double-hold oil tankers in order to safeguard the environment. Has been overwhelmingly positive. DuPont, better things for better living.
The diamond is a symbol of enduring quality. The same can be said for the Mitsubishi Diamante, an exquisite blend of luxury and performance. And for those who aspire to these special qualities, Mitsubishi offers these special leasing terms. Just $299 a month for 36 months with no down payment. The Diamante lease from Mitsubishi. The word is getting around.
It's that peaceful time of the year again. A time to relax, a time for the good things. It's a time called summer. And every year around this same time, Sunnyland presents their sale of summer. When Houstonians know quality home furnishings are on sale with savings of 20 to 40% and more. The sale is on right now. So indulge and hurry. It's the sale of summer, and it's only at Sunnyland, Houston's leader in quality home furnishings and interior design.
For your best price and selection on a new Ford car or truck, look to Mac Haik Ford. Nearly 1,000 new Fords available at Mac Haik's lowest sale price. A 1992 Explorer XLT package with all these options, yours for $16,755. A 1992 F-150 Super Cab, loaded with equipment, yours for only $11,855. For the best price and the best selection, come to Mac Haik Ford. We're open till midnight or until the last customer is served.
devoting the last 90 minutes to the upcoming convention, but you haven't seen or heard anything yet. An hour still to come from Meet the Press. Tim Russard's at convention site. Tim?
Garrick, we will have a special one-hour edition of Meet the Press with the Reverend Jesse Jackson and Governor Mario Cuomo.
All right. Thanks, Tim, and that and the whole convention week coming up. We had a good day today, 4 fun-filled days coming along.
You look darling in that
In 1972?
picture. 1972, the hairdo.
That's right.
Al and I haven't changed a bit.
Oh, not at all. You had a tie that wide, right? Well, we're going to leave you this morning with some convention scenes from the past, along with the Democratic Party theme song. Happy days are here again, but look back, remember. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Monday. In the 70s, his jump shot made him king of Madison Square Garden. Now, Senator Bill Bradley returns as the keynote speaker of the Democratic National Convention. But before he talks to the country, he'll be interviewed by Tom Brokaw on NBC Nightly News. In touch with America.
This is CLR. Clear. An amazing product that instantly dissolves calcium and lime stains that you can't scrub away. Watch as CLR dissolves the hard water scales from this humidifier filter. Have you ever seen anything like it? No amount of scrubbing was able to remove the stains from this coffee decanter. But a little CLR and water gets it crystal clean instantly. Watch how Clear wipes away hard water film from tile. Makes shower doors shine crystal clear. CLR instantly...
Also ready. Judd and a great many others have spent this past week trolling the city for the sort of stuff only Judd can best explain.
Live from New York, right here and right now. Come on and check it out. Right here and right now.
Right you are, and right this way, all you delegates. Gotham's glad you're back. So you're pretty excited about the Democrats coming to town, or what?
No.
Yeah? Why not? You don't seem very impressed.
No reason to be impressed.
No?
It's just another event.
Well, this is the third time the Democrats have come here in just the past 16 years. The last time was 1980, so a hint to delegates. If you're driving to Madison Square Garden, remember, the city that never sleeps never moves either.
Take a subway. It's a great way to travel in New York.
Good advice from a guy who takes a helicopter to work. But you might try the subway. I say you might try the subway. Think of it as the Disneyland monorail with more exotic smells. New York's taxi drivers really know their way around the city. Unfortunately, it's not this city. Can you tell me how to get to the garden?
Garden?
The garden.
Which garden?
You meet people here from countries you never even heard of, nobody even knew existed. Yesterday I'm in a cab, the driver's from Sri Lanka, and he was driving like he was grown there.
It's true. A ride in a New York cab is enough to make even Bill Clinton inhale.
These boys traveled a long way to come to the convention, and all work and no play is a dull boy.
Don't worry, Democrats. Remember, they used to call New York Fun City.
Enjoy it for what it is. It's a big, happy, interesting place.
Yeah, sure, Regis. New Yorkers may not know Clinton too well, but they're real familiar with Gore. Last week alone, there was a minor riot. During just one 24-hour period, there were 15 murders. People here are so used to being robbed, they routinely put signs in their cars urging thieves not to bother.
All the stories, you know, some things happen, but what are you going to do, you know?
Well, leave maybe. A poll taken not long ago showed a full 60% of those who live here want to get out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. On second thought, don't come.
Too late, they're here. So for the next few days, people from all walks of life will be crowded into a small space, pushing and shoving and making noise and trying to create order out of chaos. You know, come to think of it, this is the perfect place for the Democrats. Judd Rose, ABC News, New York.
Every second of an asthma attack can feel like an...
Monday on Channel 2 News.
At Madison Square Garden, the stage is set, and so is the cast, as Bill Clinton gets ready for his big moment.
This is NBC Nightly News, reported by Garrett Utley.
Good evening. Well, here it comes, ready or not. The spectacle, the speeches, and yes, the excess of a national political convention. 60,000 balloons are ready for the Democratic gathering starting tomorrow. Who will be there? Well, a lot of people, among them 4,288 delegates from Maine to American Samoa, 15,000 members of the media, and a couple of candidates named Clinton and Gore. This is, of course, a no-contest convention. That's just the way the Democrats want it. Bob Kerr is at Madison Square Garden. Bob?
Garrick, no contest, but not necessarily no problems. Almost everything is in place for the show of party unity Bill Clinton hopes to stage here, though potential problems remain with Jesse Jackson and some others. While Jackson says he will vote for Clinton, he says his active, enthusiastic support will require more dialogue.
As Clinton left church in New York today, a campaign aide said there will be further discussions with Jackson about a role in the campaign. Still, unlike other recent Democratic nominees, Clinton will not spend convention week bargaining with Jackson for his support.
I think if you look at the sources of our support, it's been a very inclusive campaign. It included minorities, it included people of all income groups, all education groups, and I'm going to continue to try to reach out and make it more inclusive.
In New York today, Jackson accused the Clinton campaign of distancing itself from some traditionally Democratic groups. There was even a warning from Governor Cuomo.
I don't want addition by subtraction. I don't want multiplication by division.
On Meet the Press, Jackson offered his qualified support for the Clinton-Gore ticket.
They'll be supporting D.C. statehood. They'll be supporting cut the military budget. They'll be supporting reinvest in our cities. They'll be supporting money for Head Start for every American child. There's a certain movement in our direction, and we intend to protect the progress that we've made.
And when asked about Ross Perot's remarks to the NAACP, in which he referred to blacks as you people, Jackson was quick to forgive.
That gaffe was not intentional or a politically motivated, racially calculated statement.
With anti-abortion and abortion rights groups already using the convention as a backdrop, Senator Gore said today he believes any plan for national health care should include federal funding of abortion. Beyond that, he disagrees with Clinton, who says he'd have a litmus test to make sure his Supreme Court nominees support abortion rights.
And I would like to see justices who read the Constitution in that way, but I would not like to see a litmus test. But that will be... That's not a vice presidential decision.
With final preparations underway, any concern about the appeal of a baby boomer Southern-based ticket were dismissed by at least one Northeastern liberal.
I don't care whether Bill Clinton and Al Gore came from the same street in Utah. If they relate to the problem of the economy, how to put people to work, everybody will understand that.
After a 4-day run here in New York, the new Democratic ticket will take its show on the road, a 6-day bus tour of 8 states. Garrick?
Thanks, Bob Kerr. In the past, Democratic conventions have been known for their squabbles and even their fights, and that required someone with a loud gavel to maintain order. Well, a fight there may not be this coming week, but this convention does have a tough chair who can make her voice heard if needed. Texas Governor Ann Richards. Here's Jim Cummins.
Poor George. He can't help it. He was born with a silver foot in his mouth. Think about that speech. I haven't had a real vacation since then.
Because that speech helped propel Ann Richards to the governor's mansion in Texas. But first she had to survive a bruising campaign against Clayton Williams, a West Texas oil man and cowboy. Richards trailed Williams by as much as 30 points in the polls until she went on the attack, accusing her millionaire opponent of not paying his taxes.
I was fighting for my life in 1986
I didn't pay any tax, but I didn't have any income.
We all had a bad year, but we paid our taxes.
Williams became desperate, calling the lady a liar.
I called you a liar today.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what you are.
He just refused to shake my hand.
Richard said her plan worked. She got her opponent to lose his cool.
The big significance was that he wouldn't shake my hand. And I knew that day that we had it. Welcome to the first day of the new Texas.
The new Texas includes more women and minorities in key government jobs, Chevrolet Suburbans instead of Cadillac limousines, and a governor with empathy for the underdog, because she's been one.
Meeting. You know, I'm an alcoholic. So much. And I'm recovering now 12 years.
She has a sense of humor and scores high in the public opinion polls. Even the boys at the Ellis County Livestock Sale Barn in Waxahachie like Governor Ann.
Not going to put too much over on her.
She's a pretty tough lady. You can tell. If she runs again, she'll have my vote again.
If she runs again. Of course, there are always those questions about running for president.
And I don't want to live in Washington right now. I love what I'm doing. I'm crazy about this job.
The speech made her famous 4 years ago. This week, she will be center stage. But when it's all over in New York, Ann Richards will be ready to go back to doing business with the Bubbas in Texas. Jim Cummins, NBC News, Dallas.
And for the delegates and others arriving in New York City for the convention, the police department has offered a list of do's and don'ts. It says, don't listen to fast-talking con artists. Don't carry a pocketbook over your shoulder. If someone confronts you with a weapon and demands your money, give it to him. The police warn, quote, be alert, be cautious, don't make yourself a target, and have an enjoyable time in New York City. Well, as we cover our world this day, overseas, the Pope enters a hospital for possible surgery. In the Middle East, Israel gets a new government. We'll cover that. And on Focus this evening, the temptation of home equity loans and the danger of getting too deeply into debt.
Doing it.
Okay. Louise here was saying that she will not freeze her hearty chicken soup in Gladlock zipper bags.
No, I'll only use the bag my mother uses.
Really? Well, let's go live to your parents' house.
Louise, we've switched to Gladlock zipper bags. Their yellow and blue make green seal shows the bag is closed. Your bag doesn't have a green seal. If you'd visit more often, you'd know that.
Landing jobs in journalism has been a floor reporter at a political convention. It requires comfortable shoes and sometimes sharp elbows in the crowds. We want to talk to our three floor reporters for NBC News, Lisa Myers, Andrea Mitchell, and John Cochran, who are there ready to go at Madison Square Garden. Good evening. And
hi there, Garrick.
Andrea, let's start with you. We're going to hear a lot of speeches this week, but Bill Clinton's is the big one. Any idea what he's going to say?
Yes, Clinton's message and the message of this convention, Garrick, is change, action, passing the torch to a new generation, and moving the party back to center. Clinton also needs to try to correct the false image that he was a rich kid who had everything handed to him on a silver platter. So you're going to hear a lot of talk about his humble origins in Hope, Arkansas. That key part of that strategy also was the selection of Al Gore as his running mate, because they want to say that they are youthful, they're energetic, they're more future-oriented than the competition, and they also believe that the Willie Horton issue of this campaign is family values. And you can't get much more squeaky clean than Al Gore, his 4 kids, and his wife, Tipper.
I don't know whether the squeaky clean convention is going to be the most exciting one, but Lisa Myers, a unity which the Democrats are pushing here is not typical of a Democratic gathering. Is it real unity or is it contrived to a certain extent?
Well, it is. They're fairly unified. I think former Vice President Walter Mondale said it best. He said, Democrats are so starved for victory this year that we finally may rise above principle. The platform has been mushed up. They refer to spending as investment. There even is language which denounces the philosophy of a program for every problem, which is a little like the Republicans coming out against capital investment.
We're talking about Republicans, John Cochran. You covered George Bush at the White House. You're in strange territory here. What would Bush not want to see come out of this convention?
I think he'd want to see, what he would not want to see is to see Jesse Jackson get on board and have this unified convention. I'll tell you, there were always people in the George Bush camp who thought that Bill Clinton was going to be gonzo in this campaign, even when Clinton was running 3rd in the polls. Now that Perot was starting to slip a bit, they're really worried, and they're really worried because Al Gore is on board. They think that Gore has those positives where Bill Clinton has those negatives in the area of the character issue, for example. And you can expect the Bush camp to go negative in this campaign if indeed Perot slides more and Clinton is clearly the competition, Garrick.
And Garrick, I wouldn't underestimate this family values issue. They really feel they have to inoculate against it, neutralize it, and so you're going to see a lot of all-American images here. It's going to remind you a lot, I think, of the 1984 Ronald Reagan campaign. Lots of marching bands and parades, and they're going to de-emphasize all of those liberal splits of the past.
Well, Lisa, this is getting more and more curious, isn't it? And in a way, this is a very significant move by the Democratic Party. They're really rushing headlong to the middle of the road.
Oh, they are. And what this convention is designed to do is not only to redefine Bill Clinton in the eyes of the American voter, but also to redefine and recast the Democratic Party. The liberals are the unhappy ones, the people, the wing of the party that is left out of this convention. And in fact, they don't mind hearing a little bit of liberal complaining along the way.
You know, we've been saying so many good things about Al Gore here. Let me say one thing that the Republicans do feel good about. They think that Al Gore is not tough. He's not a good attack politician. He can't do what Dan Quayle will probably do in this campaign. Al Gore can't get nasty. And the question is, maybe voters don't want him to be nasty, Garrick.
We'll find out. All right.
88 debates.
Thank you very much, Lisa, Andrea, John. Good luck. We're looking for you with your floor reports at the convention. And a reminder about our convention coverage. The NBC News team will be working with the McNeil-Lehrer report on PBS. That starts tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And then at 10 p.m., the coverage will be seen live here on the NBC television network. And we'll be back with a look at the week ahead in just a moment.
If you have a light to moderate bladder control problem, a TENS protection has never been simpler. No belts, no buttons.
The only story making news this coming week, for example, a federal judge will rule on whether the government should return controversial abortion pills called RU-486 that were seized from a pregnant woman who tried to bring them into this country from France. A former number 3 official at the CIA, Claire George, is scheduled to go on trial on charges that he lied about his knowledge of the Iran-Contra affair. 2 measures of the economy are due out this week. A modest increase is expected in retail sales. Consumer prices are expected to remain well under control. And in San Diego on Tuesday, there is a baseball game, the 63rd All-Star Game. And when we talk about All-Stars, one name of the recent past stands out. Pete Rose, a natural for the Hall of Fame except for that trouble he got into. What is Rose doing with his life now? What else? Hustling. Here's Linda Vester.
That's number 4,192.
Pete Rose's all-star record should have led to Cooperstown, but this is as close as he's gotten.
This is the year Pete Rose would have been eligible for baseball's Hall of Fame.
The world this Sunday. Tom Brokaw will be reporting tomorrow evening from the Democratic National Convention. I'm Garrick Utley. Good night for NBC News.
Yeah. I mean, this is a real first for me. Yes, indeed. It's a real first for me.
Monday. In the 70s, his jump shot made him king of Madison Square Garden. Now, Senator Bill Bradley returns as the keynote speaker of the Democratic National Convention. But before he talks to the country, he'll be interviewed by Tom Brokaw on NBC Nightly News. In touch with America.
This week, it's the Democratic Convention. NBC News has coverage at 10, 9 Central. And Tom Brokaw joins Robert McNeil and Jim Lehrer at 8, 7 Central for coverage on your PBS.
Join Christoph Eschenbach and the Houston Symphony for the back-to-back Beethoven Festival, July 15th through the 26th. Call 227-ARTS for ticket information.
Interview with the vice presidential candidate, Al Gore, a profile of Texas Governor Ann Richards. We'll see you at 12 o'clock for Channel 2 News at noon and a live report from Amy Huggins at the convention site.
Good morning. The Democrats are in New York City and poised to begin their convention at Madison Square Garden. Governor Bill Clinton rode into Manhattan on a wave of favorable polls, ready to become the official...
Today with Bryant Gumbel and Catherine Currick.
And good morning. Welcome to today on a Monday morning, day one of the Democratic Convention. You ready for the gridlock that is sure to hit town?
I'm ready.
Huh? It's not going to be that bad.
I'm going to avoid it at all costs, actually.
What,
Try to.
Going over by the Garden. We've got a piece a little bit later this morning that we asked some New Yorkers how you get to the Garden. I think you'll find their answers interesting and amusing. We have a lot of business to conduct this morning before we get to that, though.
That's right, Brian. Remember 4 years ago when Ann Richards wowed the crowd with Poor George? He was born with a silver foot in his mouth. Well, she's back. The Texas governor is back this go-round as chairman of the convention, and apparently she's one of the most popular people in town. We're going to be having a conversation with Ann Richards in this hour.
And a couple of people who'll be front and center at the convention will be joining us a little bit later this morning. Aretha Franklin will be in our last half hour, and as soon as we get done with news and weather, we'll be talking with the vice presidential nominee, Senator Al Gore. Our primary focus this week is on the Democratic National Convention, which this morning, as we note, gets underway at the Garden. NBC's Lisa Myers is there to start us off with a look at what the Democrats hope to achieve this week and at what's at stake. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Bryant. Former Vice President Walter Mondale may have put it best when he said, Democrats are so starved for victory that this may be the year we finally rise above principle. Bill Clinton seems to have navigated most of the landmines that blew up on the last two Democratic nominees. The party, on the surface at least, is more unified and more hopeful than it's been in many years.
The Democratic Party right now is as good a point as it's been in terms of victory. 8 years ago at the convention, Walter Mondale was a loser from the day of the convention forward. And we all knew it, quite frankly. 4 years ago, we thought we were going to win. But then we sat back and did absolutely nothing. We had no plan. We had no message.
This country's government is not working for most people today.
Bill Clinton's message is simple. Change, change, change. He will present himself as the candidate with the ideas and the vigor to change this country. This convention also is aimed at changing the image of the Democratic Party. The platform refers to spending as investment. It even condemns the idea of a government program for every problem, which is a little like the Republicans condemning free enterprise. Not everyone is happy. Reverend Jesse Jackson finally endorsed Clinton, but didn't say he'd campaign for Clinton.
There's been a kind of distancing by the campaign as a matter of strategy, really, rather innovative, from labor, from the cities, from the Rainbow Coalition. And so if it is distance that they want as a matter of strategy, we will regard that distance zone.
Clinton dismissed Jackson's comments.
I think if you look at the sources of our support, it's been a very inclusive campaign. It included minorities, it included people of all income groups, all education groups.
However, Clinton now has his sights set squarely on middle America, on the suburban and blue-collar voters who have helped elect Republican presidents since 1980.
Illinois.
This entire convention is designed merely as a prelude to Clinton's speech Thursday night, when he will try to reintroduce himself and his party to the American people.
We need to show leadership and competence, and that's what he has to project on Thursday night. He has to convince them that he has an idea of what he wants to do, that he has the ability to get it done. And if he does that, and he does it successfully, then it's a great convention.
Clinton admits that he's nervous about the speech. He will be particularly careful about the length. 4 years ago, he droned on so long that delegates applauded when he finally uttered the words in conclusion. Brian?
Lisa, any signs yet that they might yet heal any wounds with Jerry Brown and he'd be allowed to speak?
Well, they had a conversation yesterday, and Jerry Brown claims that they are moving in a positive direction. However, the Clinton campaign is adamant that there will be no speech unless Brown endorses Clinton. Brown maintains that he can speak regardless of whether he endorses Clinton, so stay tuned. Who can predict Jerry Brown?
All right, Lisa, thank you. New York City can be a chancy place to hold a convention. Democrats met in New York in 1976, nominated Jimmy Carter, and won the White House. They met in New York again in 1980, renominated Jimmy Carter, and lost the White House. More recently, the city has been caught in an economic recession. It's always been a stage for dissent, usually loud, sometimes violent. Robert Hager has more from Madison Square Garden. Good morning, Bob.
Bryant, the Democrats knew very well they were taking a chance convening in a city here that some associate with liberal politics and dissent and trouble. Republicans have been gloating about that. Listen to Vice President Quayle just a month ago.
In so many ways, the liberal Democrats chose the perfect site for their convention. Almost as if they feel a strange compulsion to return to the scene of the crime.
But Democrats dismissed this as an unfair characterization of the city, as the nearly 5,000 delegates poured in, and native New Yorkers gawked at the new arrivals.
Last night, demonstrators on both sides of the abortion issue were in front of Clinton's hotel. But police here vow the convention won't be disrupted. Assistant Chief Dennis Ryan.
We are going to be using some of every piece of equipment that this department owns, from bomb trucks to robots, horses, motorcycles, scooters. And we'll have helicopters overhead.
Early reviews from delegates are good.
The hospitality's been great. We couldn't ask for being treated in a better manner than we have thus far.
The streets are cleaner. The people of New York seem like more friendly and more out of their way to welcome the convention. I'm impressed with it.
Fascinating and enjoyable, and the people here have been very helpful to us.
Well, as you say, twice before in the last 16 years, Democrats have met in this city. Both times there were concerns in advance, but both times later, the city drew praise for the way it handled those two conventions. Brian?
All right, Bob, thanks very much. 7:06. There's news beyond the convention, of course. For that and more, let's go to Margaret Larson at the news desk. Good morning, Margaret.
Good morning, Brian. Good morning, everyone. Pope John Paul II is in the hospital in Rome this morning, undergoing tests for an intestinal problem that may require surgery. News of the hospital visit came from the Pope.
Of the people himself. He's in the nation's capital this morning, running for office as always. Willie, how you doing? Good morning.
Hi, good morning to all of you. And I'm thinking about good old New
York. For vice president. He's joining us this morning from his hotel room a couple blocks from here. Senator, good morning. Congratulations.
Good morning, Brian. Thank you.
Much is being made of the fact that you and Bill Clinton are taking the party in a new direction. What was wrong with the old one?
Well, we want to take the country in a new direction. And what we most want to accomplish is to give the American people a chance to reach out for constructive change and move our nation forward again toward economic competitiveness, toward a better life for our children, comprehensive national health care, and a new approach to our future. You know, our country has gotten into some trouble in the last few years, and most Americans would like to see us get out of this rut that the Bush Quayle team has gotten us into. We want to offer that chance for constructive change.
That's the nation, but what about the Democratic Party? What was wrong with the old direction?
Well, you know, Harry Truman had the approach that's so similar to the one that we are offering. We want government to work for the average citizen again. Right now, the government does sometimes seem to work when those who have a lot of influence and power have something that needs to get done. But it is failing the working families that make up the backbone of this country. We want to change that. We want to put people first. We want to concentrate on empowering people with the education in schools and the job training that we need to compete effectively in the world economy.
Has your role in the campaign to come been yet defined specifically?
Well, my role as I define it is to help Bill Clinton offer this economic plan and offer the people of this country the chance to change. I'd like to see our country offer leadership on the environmental issues. I think millions of jobs are at stake unless we can lead this revolution toward more efficient products that allow economic progress without environmental destruction. I think Japan and Germany are saying something we ought to listen to when they say the biggest new market in the history of world business is the market for these new processes and products that the rest of the world is demanding to have progress without environmental destruction.
But if asked to, and if it comes to that, will you be the attack dog of this campaign to discredit the Perot and Bush campaigns? I know you're going to tell me you don't want to preach it on those grounds, but if it comes to that, will you do that job?
I really and sincerely believe, Brian, that the American people are fed up with politics and tactics. And, you know, let me give you an example. A week ago Thursday, the new news about the economy came out that had all the economists in a tizzy saying, well, we may have a triple-dip recession now. We've got to have a change policy. The front page of the Washington Post carried a story the next morning that quoted one of the Bush Quayle top advisors as interpreting that economic news as meaning that he said, now we're going to have to run an even meaner campaign. The American people don't want politics as usual. They want change. We are a bigger nation than the Bush Quayle team has understood. We are a bigger people than they have been able to see. We don't want just politics. We want constructive change and a better country, a better way of life for our families.
You talked about that Republican response yesterday on several programs. Yesterday you also said that you favored having the cost of abortions covered by a national health insurance program. But a Right to Life group, as I think you know, has released a letter you supposedly wrote in 1987. In part it reads, and I'm going to quote, "During my 11 years in Congress, I have consistently opposed federal funding of abortions. In my opinion, it is wrong to spend federal funds for what is arguably the taking of human life. Let me assure you that I share your belief that innocent human life must be protected, and I'm committed to furthering this goal." Is that still an accurate expression of your moral views?
Well, first of all, let me correct the record slightly by saying that on the question presented by Roe v. Wade, does a woman have a right to choose? I have always been very strongly in favor of a woman's right to choose. I have also supported some restrictions on federal funding depending upon the circumstances. I have never changed my position. My position has always been the same. Now, with regard to the first part of your question, if we set up a national health insurance program where everybody pays into it and everybody is treated equally, and a woman chooses, and it's between her and her doctor and her family, then I think that's a completely different set of circumstances.
Aren't those still federal funds for, using your terminology, what is arguably the taking of human life?
In the context of a national health insurance program that everybody is paying into for that specific purpose, I think that's a completely different situation. But again, there should be no doubt in anyone's mind as to what the pro-choice ticket is in this election. It's the Clinton-Gore ticket.
A Washington Post poll of the convention delegates showed that just over half of the delegates who will be meeting at the Garden said the election won't be decided in November, that it's headed for the House. Does that sound pessimistic to you?
Well, I don't know. The last time we had an election as close as this one may be was when Harry Truman ran in 1948 and picked a running mate just on the other side of the Mississippi River. This may very well be a very close election, but I will predict for you that it will not go into the House of Representatives, because here in New York you can feel it with people coming in from all over the country and reporting the incredible momentum. Just in the last week or so, the burst of enthusiasm and the momentum, people sense a victory for the Clinton-Gore team, and more importantly, a victory for the country as it seeks this opportunity for constructive change.
In all fairness, Senator, you know there was great enthusiasm, momentum in Atlanta 4 years ago, too.
This is different, Brian. We've learned a lot in the last 4 years as a party. We've learned a lot as a country. For one thing, we've learned that the Bush and Quayle ticket didn't mean a lot of the things that they said when they campaigned 4 years ago. You know, when they say they're going to get our economy moving, they've tried. They've been following their plan. It has failed. They've run out of ideas. They've run out of energy. The country wants to get out of this rut they've driven us into. The country wants change. I want to help Bill Clinton put his plan into effect and give our country a chance to change.
One final note. We've only got about a minute left. What about Jerry Brown? He's still outside the tent. I know you want his support. Do you need it?
We need everybody's support. We need everybody to be a part of this winning team. And let me say also, I would like to ask Republicans and independents who are fed up with the kind of approach the Bush-Quayle ticket has been presenting to join our team, regardless of party. We want everybody to be a part of this victory.
Jerry Brown's got a lot of delegates. Does he deserve time to speak, even if he doesn't endorse the ticket?
I think he's a creative voice. I hope and expect that he will be a part of the winning team.
Does he deserve time to speak?
Well, that's not my decision to make. It's a political question, and normally the people who speak at the National Convention are people who support the party's ticket, and I'm assuming that he will be supporting the ticket, and I expect that he will.
Senator Al Gore, thank you. You're a busy man this week. We'll let you get to it.
Thank you, Brian.
Take care. We're back in just a moment. This is Today on NBC.
This week, Maury will make you laugh, smile,
and cry like no other. Starting Monday with one inspiring lady.
I was this big star on Broadway, but I was taking the ding-a-ling cab home.
From dream girl success to nightmare marriage, we'll track the life of superstar Jennifer Holliday. Plus, as pregnant wives, they were a turn-off. But now that they're moms, can they be a turn-on? They're moments that will make your week on Maury.
Today at 4 on Houston's 2.
A CIA official is charged with lying to Congress about the effort to send arms to the Nicaraguan Contras. And at home, severe weather in the Midwest, damage is heavy in northwestern Ohio. Tornadoes flattened several homes around Toledo and ripped the roof off a school. There are no reports of injuries. Tornadoes also hit Florida on Sunday. Forecasters say there could be more rough weather in parts of the east again today. It is now 7:34, time for the weather, and Willard.
This morning's weather is brought to you by Sun Chips multigrain snacks. A little sun never tasted so good.
Hey, you got that right, Josie. And since we were here the last half hour, the sun has come out. This is a fabulous poster. Congratulations, Orchids and Bouquets, to Don McMichael. This is his creation. And the Oregon Coast Music Festival, Coos Bay, North Bend area, now through July 25th. Beautiful music, great people, and probably the prettiest part of the whole United States. Without question, how lovely. Happy birthday this morning. Check it out if you will. Thanks to everybody in Orange County Friday. Had a wonderful time out there. This is Gertrude Croker, and she's from Brattleboro, not Brattleboro. It is Brattleboro, I thought, Vermont. She is 111. This beautiful woman is a teacher for deaf children for many, many years. Gets up at 11 o'clock, has a cigarette, and gets ready for lunch with 2 martinis. And 100, she does it. That's her thing. Anyway, happy birthday. As we turn the page, we see Elsie Thompson of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she's lovely at 105. We wish her the best. What is happening? Well, you heard all the stories there. Margaret had the business about the heavy weather across the Ohio Valley. Some more of that could happen again today, so please be on the lookout. Weeks temps above normal throughout the Old South and normal in the Northeast, much below in the nation's section from the Rockies all the way back down to the Plain States, parts of the upper Mississippi Valley, normal elsewhere. Weeks precip, good news, because we need all the rain we can get. We're not going to complain from the middle Mississippi, the Great Lakes, down the Ohio, Tennessee Valley, and the Northeast. Today, please be on the lookout for some strong thunderstorms in that line from western Pennsylvania back into parts of Ohio, back down towards St. Louis, all the way into the southwest. Here's what's happening in your world even as we speak.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're starting off our Monday with hazy sunshine, so it's a bright start, but muggy already. 77 now at Intercontinental Airport, 76 downtown and at Hobby. Maybe a thunderstorm today, otherwise sunny, very hot and humid. High today, 95.
HHH, hazy, hot, and humid, all the way from really New England back down to the southeast today, Katie.
Yuck, yuck, yuck. Thanks, Willard. In a moment, perhaps the most prominent woman at this Democratic convention, Ann Richards. That's right after this.
Poor George. He can't help it. He was born with a silver foot in his mouth.
I've been from the Sunshine State to sunny California. But you know where I found the best place to get a taste of the sun? Right here with Sun Chips multigrain snacks in 3 delicious flavors. Sun Chips. A little sun never tasted so good.
Sunbathing by Sun Chips. Sun Chips multigrain snacks. A little sun never tasted so good.
Have you tried Folgers coffee singles?
One coffee in its own filter.
Singular sensation, every single cup you brew.
It's like brewing a whole pot.
One
cup at a time.
Singular sensation, fresh brewed morning for you.
There's ground roast in here. In its own filter.
Folgers, singular sensation, just for one.
Folgers coffee singles. One sensational way to wake up.
I am a father of 6 and a firefighter and a paramedic, so I require a great deal of energy.
Steve Cook just tried breakfast with grape nuts for a week.
Grape nuts kept me going. Every single morning I felt good.
Grape nuts, the fat-free natural energy source.
I love grape nuts. I like the fact that it stayed crunchy in the milk. I'm sold on the grape nuts, and I'll stick with the grape nuts forever.
Breakfast with post-grape nuts cereal helps keep you going strong all morning long.
I think after a week, anyone would be sold on grape nuts.
In March, 5 million. By May, 7 million. Today, almost 8 million people have switched to MCI Friends and Family. And now it's even better. Whether you're joining or adding people to your circle, you'll now get the extra 20% savings instantly for a full 90 days, even before the people you nominate join MCI. After they join Friends and Family, you each get the extra 20% when you call one another. Call now for the fastest, surest way to cut your phone bill.
How come I have to ride in the dinghy? It's my yacht!
Just a sprinkle a day helps keep odor away.
Shower to shower body powder with baking soda to fight odor and absorbent cornstarch.
Have you had a sprinkle today?
If you're under a physician's care for high blood pressure, ulcers, or asthma, then your choice of a non-prescription pain reliever is especially important. For millions of people like you, the one doctors recommend most is Tylenol.
Texas Governor Ann Richards will chair the Democratic Convention when it begins tonight, 4 years after her irreverent keynote speech at the 1988 convention. She has become one of the most powerful women in the Democratic Party and one of the most visible as well. Today, national correspondent Jamie Gangel met Ann Richards face-to-face, and I'm envious, Jamie. Good morning.
She was sorry it wasn't you. Good morning. It's been said that she's the best political speaker in the country, and she's without a doubt the most entertaining. I started by asking the governor what it will take for the Clinton-Gore ticket to win.
I think it's going to take a combination of things. Luck is one of them, but then that's always a factor. The way I see it is that you have Perot and Bush who are going to go after each other hammer and tong. And the strategy they've got to work out is what does Clinton, what does Gore do while these other two guys fight each other. I think they rise above it. I think they sell their program, which essentially is economic recovery, jobs, family security. Then, I don't know, because this is such a peculiar year, I don't know what happens toward the end, and that's the whole ball game. If Perot has taken Bush out or Bush has taken Perot out or vice versa, then you'll have the ordinary two-person shootout right before Election Day. But I have a feeling that these three guys are going to go right on through.
You think it'll happen at the last minute?
Oh, all elections do. What we're doing now are the prelims. You know, they're the kind of walk-ons. The American public is so tired of elections and of politics that they really don't pay attention until the last couple of 3 weeks before an election.
You saw Jesse Jackson's endorsement.
Yeah.
Less than enthusiastic. Is that going to hurt?
Well, I know y'all want to pick through that. You know, it's sort of like looking for little things in the basket. I think that I think Jesse will be there enthusiastically. I think he'll help, and I think he will for very pragmatic reasons, and that is we need jobs in this country. He knows it. I think they really would like to see congressional representation for Washington, D.C., and he knows that, and he ain't going to get it from the Republicans, and he sure ain't going to get it from Ross Perot.
We keep hearing that 1992 is the year of the woman.
Yeah.
But there are two white men on the Democratic ticket,
right,
and a woman wasn't even on the short list
for
Governor Clinton.
Yeah.
Doesn't that disappoint you a little?
Not really.
Why not?
Well, I said this earlier, and they were so shocked. I don't think we were ready.
Even after Geraldine Ferraro?
Yeah. When you start thinking who could do it, who was prepared, Pat Schroeder was prepared. For her to get on that ticket, she would virtually have made the decision that she was going to give up her congressional seat. Barbara Mikulski has the experience. She would have had to give up her Senate seat. I'm not prepared.
Why didn't you? You said you didn't want to be considered.
And I didn't.
Why not?
Well, I don't want to do that. I'm happy with my job. I've got a lot of things left to do in Texas. I want to run for re-election. I really, I don't have my heart or my interest in Washington.
Ross Perot is a personal friend of yours.
Yeah, I know Ross.
What do you think of his campaign?
Well, I think he's had what's a good kind of honeymoon. You know, all the newness and all of that stuff that you get at the beginning. And now the question is whether he's got staying power.
What do you think?
Let me tell you, this business takes experience. And the little deal yesterday with saying to the NAACP, your people and you people, well, he didn't mean anything by that. But it's that kind of thing that'll kill him. And that's where the lack of experience really does hurt. So I think there's an ingredient, there's a factor here of just messing up in a lot of places that can cumulatively pose him problems.
Can he win?
Oh, sure.
Really?
Absolutely. Oh, no question about it. In fact, if I were to bet today, and that's just today at whatever, I'd say the race is between Perot and Clinton.
Okay.
I think Perot takes Bush out.
Your 1988 convention speech.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Everyone else did too. Did you have any idea that it would have the impact that it did when you said those famous two words?
Yeah.
Poor George.
He can't help it. He was born with a silver foot in his mouth. Yeah, I knew it was a dynamite speech, and I knew the silver foot line was fabulous. We debated about whether to use it. It was too good not to. It's a historic line. It was so apt and so priceless. And you know, bottom line, what people need, they need to laugh. We've forgotten how to laugh at ourselves in this country. And that's one of the reasons that speech was successful.
Can you tell us what you have in store for the Bush Quail ticket this year? Come on, a little preview.
I wouldn't tell you for anything in the world.
You are on the cover of this month's Texas Monthly.
I know it.
Part of it is you.
Yeah, the head is me. And thank God they picked a woman with a good body. I said that woman had great thighs. I haven't had thighs like that in 15 years.
I read someplace that it's been said that you're Bubba in drag, meaning a good old boy.
Well, that sounds pretty good.
Is that something that's
Am I
okay
just
with you?
like that guy out there walking up and down the street in Cuero, Texas? I hope so. I work hard at trying to stay in touch with who the people are and what they think. And I work hard at trying to stay in touch with me.
You're the expert. Who's going to take Texas?
Boy, that's a toughie. We got a shot to take Texas. It'll be between Clinton and Perot.
Yesterday at a news conference, Governor Richards was asked how effective Vice President Dan Quayle is. Without missing a beat, she said, as effective as a dysfunctional Roman candle. You wouldn't want to be on her bad side.
Ouch, no thanks. Now, Jamie, has she really ruled out all national political offices? I mean, or do you think in the future she might be interested?
She says in 1996, she's not interested, that she's running for re-election of governor.
And people are really pretty happy with her performance as governor in the state of Texas, right?
70% approval rating.
Wow, and she does. Another question I want to ask you, even though that was someone else's body with Ann Richards' head on it, she does drive a motorcycle, is that right?
She drives a Harley, and she's sensational. Last night, the Texas party, which she hosted, was the hottest ticket in town for the week. Couldn't get in.
Was it like Texas barbecue? And
you got it.
No, my invitation must have gotten lost.
Mine too.
Oh, well, thanks a lot, Jamie. Appreciate it. Of course, Ann Richards owes it all to her keynote address, and so do a lot of other people, as we'll see in just a moment. But first, at 7:48, this is Today on NBC.
Surely the Republicans won't bring this country together. Their policies divide the nation into the lucky and the left out, into the royal.
Live from New York, it's Channel 2 News. Beginning tonight, Texas Democrats lead the national convention, and 2 News puts you right in the middle of all the action.
The answer is something we'll be...
With live reports led by Ron Stone, plus a nightly wrap-up with Bill Biasa and Linda Laurel on 2 News at 10. To get the inside track on what's really going on behind Decision 92, turn to Channel 2, Houston's 24-hour news channel.
If you want to save big money on a Dodge, Jeep, or Chrysler, don't buy it here. Head to Hempstead, to the #1 Chevy truck retailer in America. Because Lawrence Marshall now sells Chryslers, Plymouths, Jeeps, Eagles, Dodge cars, and trucks at the same everyday low prices as we sell our Chevys, Olds, and Geos. Lawrence Marshall Chevy Olds Geo, $290 to Hempstead. Wink clobber big city prices.
I'll bet you want to ask me why I'm smiling. I get asked that 10 times a day. Truth is, it's because I'm so proud of my smile. Oh, I was a real coward about going to the dentist, so I neglected my teeth. Then I heard about Southern Dental. Well, they were so gentle with me, affordable and convenient, too. Southern Dental really makes me smile. Southern Dental accepts insurance and major credit cards, or use their credit plan. Look in the white pages under Southern. Call Southern Dental today. They'll make you smile, too.
Diane Shure has triumphed twice. Though sightless, she's realized her vision by winning the Grammy Award. When she developed a weight problem, she went to Nutrisystem and succeeded there, too. She changed her habits, changed her size, changed her life. Congratulations, Diane.
Nutrisize your life. Nutrisize for only $59 with Nutrisystem's introductory offer. Don't wait. Call 995-5000.
At Madison Square Garden, they've not forgotten Bill Bradley. His jersey hangs high. It's been retired there. They'll be reminded of the man who was called Dollar Bill again tonight. You know, one of the highlights of any political convention is the keynote speech. Traditionally, it's a chance for the party to showcase an up-and-coming star who sets the tone for the upcoming campaign. Tonight, though, Democrats will part with that tradition and offer 3 keynote speeches. One from Senator Bill Bradley, one from former Texas Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, and one from Georgia Governor Zell Miller. NBC's Bob Kerr has a look at their task and some keynote history.
Surely the Republicans won't bring this country together. Their policies divide the nation into the lucky and the left out, into the royalty and the rabble.
The purpose of a keynote speech is to set out the themes of the campaign, is to set out your attack on the opposition party.
Poor George. He can't help it. He was born with a silver foot in his mouth.
What it's supposed to accomplish is to tell the public, if it's television, or the people in the convention, if it isn't, what the party stands for.
And sometimes the keynote speech is memorable, as it was when delivered by a Texas congresswoman in 1976.
If we promise as public officials, we must deliver. If we as public officials propose, we must produce.
From memorable to one the keynote speaker would just as soon forget.
A new day of equality.
Senator John Glenn did not wow the audience, and so did not advance his career.
Mr. Chairman.
Which makes you wonder how it is that the governor of Arkansas, who 4 years ago bombed with a long, boring speech for Michael Dukakis, is about to become this year's nominee.
You know that I think this man has the character, the record, and the vision America needs.
Bill Clinton pressing on with his nominating speech, which has now been running for about 25 minutes altogether, and he's only about 3/4 of the way through. He has a restless crowd on his hands.
Oh, I would think it's one of the worst political speeches ever given.
And there was a speech that neither appealed to the people at the convention nor anyone in the TV audience.
How did he overcome such a bad speech 4 years ago?
He exploited his bad convention speech to go on the talk show circuit and become famous talking about how I was the guy who bombed at the Democratic National Convention.
My first question is, how are you?
Everybody, at least at home, knows I can give a speech. Now everybody knows I can blow one.
I understand maybe you might do a little something for us. You do tenor sax you play, right?
We're going to play a short song.
Reacting to his own performance 4 years ago, Bill Clinton has changed things now that he's running the convention. There will be 3 keynote speakers instead of 1, and each will be limited to 12 minutes. And get this, the Republicans have asked those wishing to make keynote speeches at their convention to submit videotaped samples.
Before TV, nobody cared much about atmospherics, and history was made. 1896 keynoter William Jennings Bryan spoke so forcefully that the convention decided to nominate him. 1924 and 28, Franklin D. Roosevelt became a national figure with his rousing speeches nominating Al Smith. And in 1948, Hubert Humphrey, then mayor of Minneapolis, became the leader of the civil rights movement.
To those who say that we are rushing this issue of civil rights, I say to them, we are 172 years late.
He put him on the map. He said it's time for the Democratic Party to leave the shadow of states' rights and enter the sunshine of human rights.
These days, the parties try to settle their arguments before the convention lights go on. What usually emerges is a lot of glossy cheerleading, yet there is emotion.
When my name goes in nomination, your name goes in nomination. I was born in the slum, but the slum was not born in me. And it wasn't born in you, and you can make it.
For me, a few hours ago, this campaign came to an end. For all those whose cares have been our concern, the work goes on, the cause endures, the hope still lives, and the dream shall never die.
And an occasional unforgettable moment. For today, Bob Kerr, NBC News, New York.
We're coming up on 7:56 on this Monday morning. We're back in just a moment. There's still more ahead on today, right after this.
Peggy Moore had her eye on this shy young man.
Lemonade? Sure.
So while she would drink the new Minute Maid lemonade, she'd serve him old-fashioned lemonade. They're both made from real lemons. Only new Minute Maid lemonade now tastes so smooth it always goes down easy. The old-fashioned stuff can be a bit too tart, and that could give her quite an advantage. The new Minute Maid lemonade, always very smooth.
For years, Hefty has set a standard for strength. Now we're setting a new standard for value. Now we're putting an extra 20% more kitchen and trash twist tie bags in every box. And we're offering them at a new everyday lower price. A message that good is worth repeating. Today's Hefty, our new strength is value.
Morning breath.
Once you're married, you get used to it.
Deep down, you know it's a problem.
I don't smell anything.
Lucky you.
Morning breath. If I had it, they'd tell me.
Dad,
Ignoring morning breath won't make it go away. Scope will. Its 2 powerful ingredients kill 90% of the bacteria that cause morning breath.
Was my morning breath really a big problem? Oh.
There's no denying it's a problem. Kiss morning breath goodbye with Scope.
At a Stouffer resort, something's always in bloom.
And his name is Jerry Brown. Brown is still arguing with party leaders over his so-called humility agenda, which he wants incorporated into the campaign this fall.
It's good for the candidate, it's good for the party, it's good for the country.
It calls for a rollback of the latest congressional pay raise, term limitations, and a $100 limit on political contributions. But party chairman Ron Brown says candidate Brown won't be allowed to speak at the convention unless he first says he'll vote for Clinton.
Oh, absolutely has to endorse the ticket.
Well, I can't imagine a Democratic Party censoring 1 out of 5 Democratic voters that this candidacy represents.
Last night, Brown was the guest of the Coalition for Housing, which helps find shelter for the homeless. As for his political home, he said despite his disputes with party leaders, he intends to remain a Democrat and will not encourage his supporters to vote for Ross Perot. Brown did say he had a very good telephone conversation with Clinton on Sunday and that efforts to resolve their differences are moving in a positive direction. So that last little doggy may wind up in the corral after all. Margaret?
All right, thank you, Kenley. While the Democrats are meeting in New York City, President Bush will be taking time out for some rest and relaxation. Henry Champ has more from Kenny Bunkport. Good morning, Henry.
Good morning, Margaret. There are times in any good contest to stand back and let the other guy have his play. And facing the Democratic Convention, that's clearly the president's plan for this week, low profile.
Returning from back-to-back summits in Europe, the president has spent his time fishing with some success, but playing golf, he says, with only fair results. And fair results are the only way to describe the president's sputtering re-election bid. The polls are disappointing. The president is described as frustrated. His summit performances were eclipsed by the formation of the Clinton-Gore ticket. Many of his key aides are hoping this week's private three-day visit at Secretary of State Jim Baker's remote Wyoming ranch can energize the campaign. Many key Republicans hope Baker, who is the president's best political friend, can either be convinced to get more involved in the day-to-day campaign or provide the strategy that won in 1988. Some are calling for the president to say simply, Jim, you're needed on board, and turn the campaign over to Baker.
On his way to Wyoming, the president will go to the All-Star game in San Diego, and while there, he will confer with the Mexican president on the Free Trade Pact. But those events are not as important as his three-day meeting in Wyoming with Jim Baker. Margaret?
Henry, thank you. In other news, Pope John Paul is undergoing a series of medical tests today to determine the source of an intestinal problem. The Pope announced his hospitalization Sunday during his weekly appearance before a crowd in St. Peter's Square. The Pope was shot in the stomach 11 years ago in an assassination attempt. Some are speculating that the Pope's current stomach problems are related to the wounds he suffered then. It is now 8:07. That's the news. Back to Bryant and Katie.
What's John Paul, 71, 72 years old?
He's about that age. I don't know exactly. He has been, though, traditionally in very good health.
Yeah, 72, we're told. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Margaret. Let's go on down Washington Way once again. Willard Scott said he had the sunshine out there. Still peeking through, Willie? What's up?
Still peeking through, and I just got to say what a beautiful man Pope John Paul. Remember that marvelous morning they took us to the Paulist Chapel? You and I and Jane Pauley and all of us had the private audience. That was a beautiful moment. Wish him well. He's a good man. Brian, I want to show you something. They finally found one that'll fit me and Charlie together. Take a look at this sucker. This is a 10X. This thing, you can put it on a tall ship and sail from here to Bermuda and back. Well, let me show you, give you an idea. If I can get this out of here. Look at the coat hanger the sucker comes. I mean, that's a big dude. The grand opening of the New World Tropics exhibit at the Beardsley Zoological Center in beautiful downtown Bridgeport, Connecticut, Wednesday the 15th. Check it out. It's a winner. Beardsley Zoo. Happy birthday and a happy anniversary this morning, Mid-Atlantic states, where it's hot and sticky like it is in New York and Boston and all over the Ohio Valley today. This is Lily Redwine of Salem, Missouri. She's 106, bright and independent and pretty as a picture. And for an anniversary, we turn the page, the 75th wedding anniversary of Oscar and Tilda Lee, Great Falls, Montana. He's 100, she'll be 100 in September, and we wish them a happy anniversary. How about that, 75 years? Okay, you know the story in Toledo and Cleveland. They had strong thunderstorms. Well, look out again from Rockford, Illinois, from Indianapolis, Quincy. A lot of flooding, heavy rain expected, 5 to 7 inches in Illinois, and the possibility of tornadoes exists again today. A high risk factor for sure. Rain really from the mountains of New England, the Great Lakes back down through the upper Mississippi, down into the western plains, into the southwest, and in that red area on your color set, from really Texas all the way back up through the western Ohio Valley and the middle Mississippi, strong thunderstorms. Be on the lookout. Hot in the southeast along the Gulf. It is sizzling. Here's what's happening in your world even as we speak.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're starting off our Monday with hazy sunshine, lots of humidity, and already 81 degrees now downtown and at Hobby Airport. Could be an afternoon thunderstorm or two today, but mostly just sunny and very hot and plenty humid, too, high of 95.
Sun's doing all right now. It's right in the eye. They say when you can't see anything, it's perfect TV picture. Katie, back to you.
Thanks so much, Willard. Traditionally, the majority of African Americans vote Democratic, and this year, with a three-way race, that vote becomes even more important for the Democrats to hold on to. For Governor Bill Clinton, it could mean the difference between victory and defeat, and it could give the candidacy of Ross Perot a boost as well. But this weekend, Perot turned off some potential voters when he spoke before the NAACP convention in Nashville.
financially at least, it's going to be a long, hot summer, right? Now, I don't have to tell you who gets hurt first when this sort of thing happens, do I? Your people do. Your people do.
Here to discuss those remarks is the co-chairman of the Perot Independent Presidential Campaign in New York State, the Reverend Calvin Butts, who is also pastor of the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, as well as Eleanor Holmes Norton, Congresswoman from Washington, D.C. Good morning to both of you all. Let me start with you, Congresswoman Norton, if I could. What did you think of Ross Perot's remarks before the NAACP?
Well, I imagine what the great majority of black people thought of them and what most sensitive white people thought of them, that they were insensitive. He's apologized for them. We've seen people make those kinds of mistakes before. We accept his apology. On the other hand, it did tell me that he doesn't know us, that a white man who could have lived in the South for over 60 years and haven't found out yet that you don't say to black people, you people, hadn't bothered to find out much about our culture, our needs, our sensibilities, and our sensitivities.
So you don't necessarily think it was a malicious or racist comment? It was just out of touch?
I am sure it wasn't malicious. He went there to try to woo black people. I don't believe that Ross Perot is a racist. What I do believe is that he has no connection to our community, no history with our community. I have no idea of where he stands on race. His speech before the NAACP didn't encourage me because he does not know how to speak directly to race, as Gore and Clinton did, but spoke in far more general terms. The man just doesn't know much about black people, hasn't given much of his life or time to them, doesn't deserve the vote of black people.
Reverend Butts, were you troubled by his comments? How did you interpret them?
I think his remarks were unfortunate. I happen to agree with Congresswoman Norton, however, that they were not malicious. I think that he needs more help in terms of interpreting the sensitivities of people of African descent in America. However, I think when he talked about the economic condition in this country and who gets hit the hardest by it first, he was right on target. African Americans and other minorities do suffer greatly as a result of a depressed economy. I also think that when you take a look at Ross Perot and compare him with Bill Clinton, that the insensitivity that may have come through Ross Perot is no less than the insensitivity that we get from Bill Clinton, who at every turn tries to distance himself from the African American community. And I think, therefore, that black people who have traditionally given their vote to Democrats, in light of this and other insults of race, should really consider an alternative.
Do you agree with Reverend Butts that Bill Clinton has distanced himself and alienated black voters in any way?
Well, I have to say that there has been concern in the black community that there had not been much discussion about racial issues, even though Bill Clinton and Mr. Gore have very good civil rights records. But let's look at the difference between Gore and Clinton at the NAACP convention and Perot at the NAACP convention. If Perot says one more time that his daddy gave his black servants cards to carry around so if he got in trouble, they could know which white man to call, I'm going to scream. What Gore and Clinton showed was an ability to reach into their political past, not their personal past. And the reason is Perot didn't have any political past. And I'll tell you one thing. We got an all-white ticket. If I'm going to vote for two white men, I'm going to know every bit as much as I can about where they've stood on race. None of them are perfect. But when I'm presented with a real pig in a poke, a man who has no record, particularly no public record, and I know nothing about the depth of his feeling about race, the depth of his feeling about gender, except that he hasn't given much of his life or time to it, it's hard for me to say to black people, step up to that plate.
How can you say that to black folks, Reverend Butts? What is appealing about Ross Perot to African Americans in your view?
I think that we deserve to know much more about him. And I hope that we will be able to interpret and get more about him on the table so that African Americans can see him more clearly. But we do know a lot about Clinton. And we do know that the Democrats have insulted us, have taken our vote for granted, have absolutely trashed Jesse Jackson, and have brought onto their ticket what I call a Jiffy Pop freeloader named Al Gore. Jesse Jackson revived the Democratic Party. literally brought 8 million votes back to it, encouraged people to register. It's fired up the imagination of the American people for 84 and 88. And all he gets is someone who distanced himself from him or someone who uses a rap singer to try to discredit Reverend Jackson. I think that we can no longer go with business as usual. And I'm tired of the Democrats simply trying to out-conservative the Republicans in order to gain back the Dixiecrats who were responsible for much of our oppression in the South in the first place. It's time for us to take a look at a new alternative. We may not know all that we need to know now, but I think that we will know more as the time goes on, and I hope that it will be the kind of thing that will cause more and more of us to turn away from business as usual.
And if it's not?
Well, then if it's not, I'll have to back up, and I'll support Ron Daniels.
All right. Reverend Butts, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, thank you both for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it. And we'll be back with more on Today right after this.
The following message is brought to you by the fun ships of Carnival Cruise Lines, the most popular cruise line in the world.
If you're looking for a great vacation, start at the top. Take a 3, 4, or 7-day fun ship vacation on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
Now at Red Lobster for lunch. For a short time, shrimp and chicken just $4.99. Golden fried shrimp and grilled chicken breast, plus potato and salad, just $4.99.
So hurry
to Red Lobster for lunch.
The diamond is a symbol of enduring quality. The same can be said for the Mitsubishi Diamante, an exquisite blend of luxury and performance. And for those who aspire to these special qualities, Mitsubishi offers these special leasing terms. Just $299 a month for 36 months with no down payment. The Diamante lease from Mitsubishi. The word is getting around.
Ah, delicious. Another 100th anniversary coming up. And this one's for a real friend, Maxwell House Coffee. For 100 years, Maxwell House has helped people in communities all across America start their day with a smile. And to celebrate this special birthday, Maxwell House is going to honor 100 people who've given a lot to their community. So just look for details in your Sunday paper. And congratulations, Maxwell House. Happy 100th and many happy returns.
A month ago, one of our MCI customers sent us a letter. He thanked us for the MCI Friends and Family Service that enabled him to stay in touch with his fiancée while he was away at school. Why are we telling you all this? Well, the letter contained an invitation, and it isn't every day that the chief executive of a long-distance phone company gets asked to the wedding of 2 of his customers. We wish them all the very best.
Bill Clinton's choice of Senator Al Gore as his running mate has brought together 2 well-known wives who made very different choices with their lives and careers. NBC News correspondent Lisa Myers is at Madison Square Garden this morning with a report. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Bryant. Behind the scenes, Hillary Clinton remains her husband's top political advisor. However, this week for public consumption, she will pose as a traditional political spouse. Tipper Gore won't be posing. That's a role with which she has been comfortable for many years.
Thank you.
One factor in Bill Clinton's choice of Al Gore was his very traditional family. The hope that their embodiment of so-called family values might get the Clintons off the defensive. In their first joint appearance, Hillary Clinton emphasized what she and Tipper Gore have in common.
I would like to introduce you to someone who will be working with many of us to make real the kinds of dreams that we hold for the children of America. I'd like to introduce you to Tipper Gore.
Both have been committed to children's issues for many years, but in very different ways. Hillary is a national advocate of children's rights and social programs. Tipper initiated a crusade against rock lyrics.
A voluntary labeling is not censorship. Censorship implies restricting access or suppressing content. This proposal does neither.
The irony is that effort hurt her husband politically in 1988, when Gore ran for president.
This year, I guess it's a measure of the difference between 1988 and 1992, that her championship of family values and her long-standing concern about rock music and the lyrics is a great strength to this campaign.
Some of Clinton's advisors see Tipper as an important balance to Hillary, who still hasn't been forgiven by many voters for comments like these.
You know, I'm not sitting here as some little woman standing by my man like Tammy Wynette.
I suppose I could have stayed home and baked cookies and had teas, but what I decided to do was to fulfill my profession, which I entered before my husband was in public life.
Although she has toned down her statements and lowered her public profile considerably, high-octane Hillary still is viewed negatively by many voters. Some consider the public perception unfair.
I do feel distressed at the fact that there's all of this, there's so much sort of sense that Hillary Clinton does not represent the proper political wife.
In some respects, Hillary Clinton may be the next generation of political spouse, strong-willed, assertive, with her own career. Tipper Gore, although strong-willed and independent, is closer to what many Americans are comfortable with in a candidate's wife.
That was great.
In a way, the combination of the two may say what Hillary claims she has been trying to say all along.
And what it says to American women is there's no single blueprint for how you live your life. There are a number of ways, there are a number of choices you can make along the way.
The fact that Hillary Clinton seems to be forced to play a different role in public than in private is the clearest signal yet that the Democrats believe that family values is an issue on which they remain quite vulnerable. Bryant?
Lisa, real quick, can they push Tipper out front and use her as a campaigner while still muzzling Hillary as they have?
Oh, that's exactly what they would like to do. In fact, there's some talk now of even trying to reintroduce Hillary as well to try to reduce some of her negatives.
All right, Lisa, thanks so very much. Coming up on 8:22 on this Monday morning, so much more ahead right after this.
When my Raymond gets constipated, I give him Phillips milk of magnesia. Phillips is the only one that soothes that stomach acidy feeling Ray sometimes gets.
Apparently we don't have that tape.
Christina.
Will come to order. The Democratic National Convention underway at Madison Square Garden. New evidence of savagery in Yugoslavia, this time Serbs are the victims. And the federal government wants tough new rules for testing your car's exhaust.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Reporting tonight from the Democratic National Convention in New York City.
Good evening from Madison Square Garden, home of the Knicks, the Rangers, the circus, heavyweight fights, and this week, a governor from Arkansas, his running mate from Tennessee, and 5,000 Democrats from around the country determined to break a long losing streak in presidential politics. In the best political tradition, they're determined that no constituency should go unnoticed. The opening honor guard was made up of homeless veterans from 4 wars. For Bill Clinton especially, this is a second chance, and as NBC's Andrea Mitchell tells us tonight, his friends and advisors insist the real Bill Clinton is just getting to be known. Andrea?
Tom, this week is Bill Clinton's big chance to pull ahead of the competition. He'll have hours of priceless airtime to try to undo the damage of a grueling campaign. His first priority, erase false impressions that he was a spoiled rich kid who had everything handed to him. Today and all week, you'll be hearing about his humble origins in Hope, Arkansas.
My family, many of my relatives were poor for most of my life. I mean, really poor.
The larger message that Clinton and Gore represent change, the future, a way to get the country back on track.
I believe in my heart that the Clinton-Gore ticket gives our country the best chance we can possibly have for the change we need.
The Democrats are also trying to neutralize what they expect to be the Willie Horton issue of 1992, a Republican attack on family values. This is the image they want to project, a happy family on the cover of People magazine. The campaign wanted to show off the wives in a traditional setting, an afternoon tea. Hillary Clinton has tried to avoid all controversy lately. But when California delegates pressed her to give Jerry Brown a role at the convention, the carefully constructed unity is showing a few cracks. Paul Tsongas released his 555 delegates to Clinton today, but not without a warning.
We Democrats lose the White House for one very simple reason. Nobody trusts us with the economy.
On Meet the Press, Mario Cuomo gladdened Republican hearts by praising Clinton for proposing higher taxes, without mentioning that Clinton would only tax the rich. On the trail today, one questioner didn't think Clinton's promises added up.
I want to believe everything that you're saying. You know, it sounds real good and it's making everybody happy. But where are you getting all of this money from?
Well, that's the rub. The wealthy have to pay their fair share again. That's where we're going to get the money.
Clinton is hoping to present a more moderate Democratic Party to America this week. That will depend upon whether those who are left out are more interested in winning than doing what Democrats usually do, arguing amongst themselves. Tom?
Thank you, Andrea. A spokesman for Ross Perot today denied reports that Perot has offered the second spot on his ticket to Doug Wilder of Virginia, the nation's only black governor. Wilder, a Democrat, is not happy that no time has been set for him to address this convention, and he has had contacts with the Perot staff, but apparently nothing concrete. The nominee of this convention will make his acceptance speech Thursday night, but Governor Clinton is with us right now from his hotel suite in Midtown Manhattan. Governor, let's do a couple of house cleaning items if we can. First of all, Doug Wilder, would that be a loss to lose him to the Ross Perot ticket? And why have you not set a time for him to address this convention?
I did not know that no time had been set for him until today. I talked to Doug Wilder a few days ago. We had a very good talk. I told him that I look forward to his coming here and that I wanted him to be part of our campaign. And I had every reason to believe, based on our talk, that he would be. So I didn't know that, and I'm not sure that we can't correct that. I didn't know it until today. I had encouraged that he be given a time to speak, as I have for all the people who ran in this primary process.
How about Jerry Brown? Will you allow him to address the convention as well?
Well, we're negotiating that now. Our people are discussing it with him. The convention people are discussing it with him. It's not just a question of whether he speaks, but when and under what circumstances, and whether he's going to endorse the campaign in the fall. You know, when we all started, we were asked repeatedly if we would support the nominee of our party if we lost, and I always said that I would. I think that it's clear that we have far more in common than divides us, and the Brown campaign in particular should respond strongly to the campaign reforms that I've got here in this platform, and the things that I insisted be put in to restrict the influence of lobbyists in Washington, to stop the revolving door from public service to private service. Those are the things I think that Jerry Brown really ran on, that he struck a very responsive chord on. So I'm very hopeful that we'll all be unified and that you'll see all of the people who ran in this primary process a part of a unified campaign and also a part of this convention.
The man who's going to nominate you, Mario Cuomo of New York, sat at this very chair yesterday and said that you're going to have the courage to say to all the people of this country, we're going to have to raise your taxes to eliminate the deficit. Are you prepared to do that?
I'm not prepared to agree that we have to do that. I don't think we ought to do George Bush read my lips, because nobody believes that anymore. But it's clear to me that the taxes, under this administration, taxes have been raised on middle-class people whose incomes were going down. Taxes have been lowered on the wealthy whose incomes were going up. We can raise quite a lot of money just by asking people with incomes over $200,000 to pay their fair share, still less than they would have been paying in rates in 1980. And by asking people, particularly foreign corporations who have reduced their tax liability while their incomes went up, to pay their fair share. I think that's where we ought to start. I don't think we need an increase on the middle class. Their taxes have gone up while their incomes are going down.
Governor, in the platform it says everything is on the table in making the new economic plan. Does that mean that Social Security is also on the table?
Well, not the sanctity of Social Security. That is not on the table. We make a clear commitment to the integrity and the sanctity of the Social Security system.
But you may have to pay more for it.
Upper income people might have to pay more for it.
And only upper income people?
That's correct.
Beginning at what level? 60,000, 100,000, 150,000?
Well above 100,000.
So you are prepared to tell this convention that Social Security could be means tested if we were to get this back in balance?
No, not means tested. Means tested would take benefits away from people who paid into Social Security. I'm opposed to that. The only question is whether upper income people who are getting more back from Social Security than they paid in, and whose tax rates are limited, capped, should pay more for the benefits they receive. I'm not for means testing Social Security. It's one of the things that's really worked in our country because we haven't means tested it. Those programs that we've means tested have caused us a lot of trouble, like Medicaid, which is ballooning in cost and not doing what it's supposed to do.
Governor, finally, will you meet with Jesse Jackson before Thursday night?
I don't know the answer to that. I've been talking to him, and we've had a couple of good talks, and I called him and told him I appreciated his endorsement on Sunday. And I wouldn't rule it out, but I have to spend most of my time between now and Thursday working on my speech. trying to, you know, cut it down some.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, it is a new era after all, and you are the nominee this time. Thank you very much, Governor Bill Bradley. Bill Clinton, part 2 of our double bill tonight, Bill Bradley. He's the keynote speaker tonight, and we'll be hearing from him later in this program as well. And New York, host city to the Democrats. Bob Herbert gets to the core of the Big Apple, and he finds it more tasty than you may have imagined.
Listen, athlete's foot fungus grows beneath the surface of your skin.
One of the Clinton people whose job it is to keep this place under control, under Clinton's control. Lynn?
Well, Peter, in order to keep this place under control, the Clinton campaign has 35 what they call cluster whips who are connected by this black telephone to the trailer in the back. This is where they get their instructions. Robin Friedman from Akron, Ohio.
And Ross Perot. Earlier today, the outspoken chair of the convention, Texas Governor Ann Richards, lived up to her reputation. She was asked why there were no women on Bill Clinton's short list of potential running mates.
There are very few women in this country who really are prepared and capable of being on that ticket and serving as President of the United States. The ones who are, I don't think any of them would do it, because to do it, they would have to give up what they've got.
For women, for voters of both sexes and all stripes, this is a year of unrest.
Of course, we're talking about the former chief of staff at the Republican White House, John Sununu. What is he doing in a Democratic convention? I don't know. What do you think? All right, Robin, we're going to be watching to see how you keep control. Peter?
Thanks, Lynn, very much. I suspect John Sununu is working for CNN. It's what he's been doing since he left the White House. We all know, by the way, that whatever our politics, if we have any, these great expressions of the democratic process always have moments not to get people just excited, but to pluck at the heartstrings. There was one of those moments to open this convention this afternoon, and as Bob Jamieson reports, it had some real history to it.
Detail, 10, hit.
For 3 long days, 9 New England veterans polished old skills for their role at the convention.
Want to just let it fall?
Let it fall. Skills they last used in World War II, in Korea, in Vietnam, in the Persian Gulf.
A lot of us are pretty rusty still, but it's like riding a bike. Once you do it for a while, it comes back to you.
Left, your left, left, your left.
It has come back to these men of 4 generations.
Left, right, or left.
I feel both very proud and honored to be able to carry the Marine Corps flag and represent the United States Marine Corps in this event.
The 9 share more than pride in their military service. They are also all homeless and residents of the New England Shelter for Homeless Veterans, a place that helps them back to society's mainstream by requiring they give up drugs and alcohol, hold down a job, and save half their paycheck.
Now, these men are homeless. They're not helpless. A third of the homeless in this country are veterans, and that's wrong. And there must be a solution that involves both Democrats and Republicans.
Perfect. Got it. The final step was dusting off their old uniforms. For many, the last thing they have held on to.
In spite of the fact that a lot of these guys are down and out right now, they're still very patriotic, and they still care for their country very deeply.
And this evening, with pride and precision, they carried the colors into Madison Square Garden. Not just to raise the flag, but also America's consciousness. Bob Jamieson, ABC News, New York.
It was a moment. There is other news in the world. We'll have some of it when we continue.
Morning. What's for breakfast? Is from Georgia Governor Zell Miller, former Texas Representative Barbara Jordan, and 3-term New Jersey Senator Bill Bradley. The 48-year-old Bradley passed on a presidential bid of his own this time after almost losing his Senate seat in 1990. A Princeton graduate, Bradley, like Bill Clinton, is a Rhodes Scholar. But before that, basketball. Olympic gold in 1964, then 10 years with the Knicks right here in Madison Square Garden. They remember Dollar Bill Bradley here. His number 24 is retired now. It's hanging in the hall that is the scene of Bradley's homecoming tonight. And joining me now from our New York studios, Senator Bill Bradley. Senator, you have been particularly eloquent on the subject of race this year. Senator Jesse Jackson is making it clear that he's not entirely happy with his treatment by the Clinton campaign. Is his complaint justified in your judgment?
Well, I think Reverend Jackson endorsed Governor Clinton just the other day, and it's incredibly important for all Americans that Bill Clinton be the next president. So I expect he and all of us are going to be pulling together for victory in the fall.
In the platform and in the tone of this campaign, there's a good deal less this time about civil rights and a good deal more about responsibility and family responsibility and welfare reform. The Democratic Party entering a new era with one of its core constituencies, the black people of this country?
I don't think so. I think that diversity is our strength, not our weakness. And the fact is that we have to reach out to all peoples, African, Asian, Latino, Native Americans, and white Americans. We're all in this together. And if we don't pull together, we're not going to make it. We're either going to all advance together or each of us is going to be diminished. It's as simple as that. It's not a political choice. It's a reality.
Senator, one of your passions, of course, is economics. As you have looked at Governor Clinton's economic plan, and you heard him tonight say that he thought that they wouldn't have to raise taxes on the middle class. Do you think it's possible to reduce the deficit in the next 4 years without raising taxes for everyone?
I think you can definitely reduce the deficit in the next 4 years. I think that cutting spending ought to be the first priority. I think that there's a lot of spending out there that can be cut.
And what about taxes itself, however? Do you think it is possible to get the deficit down to a manageable level without raising the taxes? For example, some on the middle class, as Mario Cuomo suggested here yesterday, Bill Clinton have the courage to go before the American public and say he's going to do that?
I think that if you're going to eliminate the deficit in 4 years, you're probably going to need some taxes. The fact is, though, that the American people should know what each of the candidates are going to do before they cast their vote. So by October 1st, I hope President Bush is going to put out a program that will show how he would eliminate the budget deficit. Governor Clinton has already begun to do that, and Ross Perot, who knows what he's going to do. So the point is that the American people deserve to know what's in store for them in the economic area in the next 4 years.
As a student of American politics, do you admire the way that Ross Perot has reignited the debate about American politics in this presidential year of 1992?
Well, he's an interesting factor. I think he is benefiting from all the anti-government speeches that Ronald Reagan and George Bush made for 12 years. There's a certain irony in that fact. He's also $100 million isn't peanuts. I think that he can be a factor. But also, Tom, you know, he hasn't yet taken that final step. And until he does, I'm not sure he's in.
Thank you very much, Senator Bill Bradley. We'll see you later tonight here at Madison Square Garden when he is the keynote speaker, the leadoff man, the 8th ranking scorer for the New York Knicks, Senator Bill Bradley. Back in a moment, more news, also John Chancellor's commentary.
Knock out the flea and tick problem for good. Hit him with the old 1-2 combination punch.
Today, that, in his words, as Clinton is a failed governor of a small state, how can he govern the whole country? Well, this week, we are going to revisit Arkansas to look again at Clinton's gubernatorial record. And with the first of his 3 reports, here's ABC's John Martin.
Arkansas is... Congratulatory telephone call to Israel's new Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, and Secretary of State Baker hurriedly prepared for a Sunday meeting with Rabin in Israel in an attempt to break the peace stalemate. In other developments today, Rabin made a passionate call for peace, telling Parliament that he would go immediately to Arab capitals.
Thank you, Tom. We've heard a lot about geography and generational change in the past few days. The Democratic ticket is made up of a young governor from Arkansas and a young senator from Tennessee. It's been called the double Bubba ticket because there are 2 white male Southerners on it. Bubbas? Well, hardly. This is a pair of Ivy League overachievers. But geography and young candidates aren't half as important to this year's politics as something else. The movement of the Democratic Party from the left to the center of the political spectrum. Bill Clinton and company are pushing and shoving the Democratic Party away from its allegiances with various interest groups, labor unions, feminists, blacks, gays. One theory being that the Democratic Party became so involved with these groups that it lost its appeal to the great mass of middle-class voters. It has lost 5 of the last 6 presidential elections. Clinton and other moderates have argued for years that the party would keep on losing unless it got back to the center of the road. That is now happening. Clinton is the nominee. The party platform is a centrist document. Al Gore, Clinton's moderate ally, is on the ticket. The fall campaign will be aimed at middle-class Democrats who've been voting for Republicans. The interest groups that received Democratic Party support for 20 years are very unhappy about this. A representative of one of them said today that the Clinton people are not creating a very good karma here. That's right, and that's the big news from this convention. Tom?
Thank you, John. From karma to the Big Apple, New York, a city with something for everyone. In a moment. Not just for Bill Clinton, but also for New York City, which, like Clinton, hopes to win new friends and present a new image to the delegates and to the country watching on television. After all, as NBC's Bob Herbert tells us tonight, the Big Apple does taste a lot differently than many people realize.
Democrats have arrived in the city Americans love to hate.
If New York sank into the Hudson River, it wouldn't hurt my feelings.
Public toilets on the streets of New York. Isn't that redundant?
Bad-mouthing New York has become a national pastime. It's so widespread, we tend to forget how important New York really is to the rest of the country. It is, for example, the nation's financial capital, home of the New York Stock Exchange and headquarters of the banking and securities industries.
I remember when people thought New York City was going to go into bankruptcy. People in the Congress didn't really pay any attention until a school system in Arkansas couldn't finance because everybody was scared of municipal bonds.
In those days, even the president didn't get it. Gerald Ford had ignored New York's call for help. But at an economic summit in Europe, President Giscard d'Estaing of France and Chancellor Helmut Schmidt of West Germany took Ford aside and told him privately that a bankrupt New York would be a financial calamity.
It wasn't until that happened that the President of the United States finally really came to terms with the fact that this was an important thing.
Most of what goes on in New York makes no difference to us.
Unless you happen to work for a living. New York is America's corporate capital, with more national and international headquarters than any other city in the world. It's also the center for major supporting industries like accounting, public relations, and advertising.
I think of New York as being the headquarters for arts and culture. It's astonishing what a city like New York can encompass.
There's Broadway. There's the fashion industry. New York is the telecommunications and media capital of the U.S., the place where ideas are generated and disseminated. Getting bad-mouthed is one thing, but New York feels it gets a raw deal financially from the rest of the country. The city gets back only 77 cents in services for every dollar it sends to Washington in taxes. That's a loss to city residents of more than $10 billion a year.
Some people think it's the in thing to complain about New York, but New York is still the greatest urban center in the world.
With all its faults, I don't think that there's any place, no place else like it.
Bob Herbert, NBC News, New York.
And the city does expect to get some of that money back this week. That's Nightly News for now. See you tonight at 8 Eastern Time for our joint PBS coverage here with NBC. And then at 10 tonight, NBC will begin its own independent coverage of this Democratic National Convention. We'll see you then.
Clinton, a survivor of an extraordinary political year. Now the Democrats come together behind their candidates. Join Tom Brokaw, John Chancellor, and the NBC political team for full coverage of the Democratic National Convention, beginning with tonight's keynote addresses. NBC News, Decision 92, in touch with America.
This week, the Democratic Convention comes to New York. Join Bryant Gumbel and Katie Couric with Bill Clinton, Mario Cuomo, Jimmy Carter, and others. This week on the show America loves to watch today.
To inaugurate their new swimming pool, the Lake Edna Thompsons had a splashy event with food from KFC. They picked up a